The earliest known events of Elden Ring's lore involve a cosmic battle between primordial forces, long before the Erd Tree or even the Greater Will arrived in the lands between. In that ancient epic, life itself was not yet separated into distinct forms, but existed as a churning, chaotic unity called the Crucible, where all living things blended together in a primordial soup of flesh, scale, feather, and horn, a state of existence so alien to our understanding that the very concept of identity, of self, had not yet been born. This was a time when dragons ruled the skies, not as creatures of legend, but as living gods, when giants walked the earth as titanic forces of nature, and when the boundaries between beast and plant and sentient being were non existent, all things flowing into one another in an endless cycle of transformation. But this age of primal chaos would not last, for something vast and incomprehensible turned its gaze toward the lands between, an outer god of such immense power that its arrival would reshape reality itself, imposing order upon chaos, light upon darkness, and beginning a chain of events that would lead to betrayal, madness, war, and the near total destruction of an entire world. What followed was not a simple tale of good versus evil, but rather a labyrinthine saga of ambition and hubris, of gods who sought to control destiny and mortals who dared to defy them, of love twisted into obsession and loyalty corrupted into treachery, of children born cursed and heroes driven mad, of a golden order that promised eternal perfection but delivered only stagnation and suffering, and of a shattering so catastrophic that it fractured not just a kingdom, but the very fabric of life and death itself. The story of Elden Ring is the story of a world that has died and been reborn countless times, each iteration more broken than the last, each age built upon the ruins and lies of those that came before, and at the heart of it all lies a terrible truth that the gods themselves have tried to bury, that the golden light which bathes the lands between is not the warm glow of divinity, but the cold gleam of a cosmic parasite, and that every act of heroism, every sacrifice, every drop of blood spilled in service of the golden order has been in service of a lie so profound that to understand it is to understand the true horror of existence in this cursed realm. You will witness how a goddess removed death itself from the world, believing she could create a paradise, only to doom her children to an eternity of suffering. You will see how a demigod's love for his brother became so twisted that he would unmake himself, shedding his very identity in pursuit of an impossible resurrection. You will learn of a night when assassins blessed with the rune of death struck down the most beloved of all the demigods, and how that single murder set in motion a war that would consume the entire world. You will discover the truth behind the shattering, that moment when the Elden Ring, the metaphysical framework that held reality together, was broken not by accident, but by design, and how the demigods, those godlike children of Queen Marika, turned upon one another in a savage war for the shards of power, each becoming more monstrous with every victory, their bodies and minds warped by the great runes they claimed, until they were no longer recognizable as the heroes they once were. You will walk through the ruins of Landel, the royal capital, once the shining jewel of the Golden Order, now a tomb of ash and madness, where the very streets are haunted by the ghosts of a civilization that believed itself eternal. You will descend into the depths beneath the earth, into the Seofra River and the Lake of Rot, into places where the light of the Erd Tree has never reached, and where older, darker gods still hold sway, gods of scarlet rot and frenzied flame, gods who offer not salvation, but annihilation, and you will come to understand that the conflict between the Golden Order and its enemies is not a battle between light and darkness, but between different visions of damnation. You will meet Rani the Witch, who orchestrated the murder of her own body to escape the control of the outer gods, who seeks to usher in an age of stars where the divine will no longer meddle in the affairs of mortals, even if it means condemning the world to 1,000 years of cold and isolation. You will encounter Miquella the Unalloyed, perhaps the most tragic figure in all the lore, a demigod born cursed with eternal childhood who sought to cure his sister's rot and create a new order free from the influence of outer gods, only to be stolen away into a nightmare realm where he remains trapped, his followers waiting in vain for a return that may never come. You will face Malenia, Blade of Miquella, the greatest warrior the lands between has ever known, undefeated in battle despite being afflicted with the scarlet rot that has consumed her body from within, a woman whose loyalty to her brother is so absolute that she has become a living weapon, a goddess of war who brought devastation to entire regions in her search for him, who in her duel with Radon unleashed the rot upon Caelid and transformed a land of red sands and proud warriors into a festering hellscape of disease and madness. You will learn of Radon, the Star Scourge, the mightiest of all the demigods, who loved his scrawny horse Leonard so much that he learned gravity magic solely so he could continue to ride him even as he grew to titanic size, who held back the very stars themselves to protect his homeland, and who now, mind destroyed by scarlet rot, wanders the dunes of Caelid as a mindless beast, consuming the corpses of friend and foe alike, a hollow shell of the hero he once was. You will discover Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy, who fed himself to a god-devouring serpent in his quest for power, merging his flesh with the beast and becoming an abomination that seeks to devour the very gods themselves. His manor of Volcano Manor, now a haven for those who have turned against the Golden Order, assassins and heretics who carry out his will even as he digests in the serpent's belly. You will uncover the fate of Godwyn the Golden, the first demigod to die, whose death was not a true death, but something far worse, for his soul was slain while his body lived on, and that body, buried beneath the Erd tree, has become a cancer, a spreading infection of undeath called Deathroot that corrupts everything it touches, transforming the dead into those who live in death, and creatures trapped in before time itself had meaning. Before the sun rose over any horizon, before the concept of death or birth existed in any form we might recognize, there was the One Great. This was not a being, not a god, not even a place, but rather a state of absolute unity. Everything that would ever exist, everything that could ever exist, resided within the One Great as pure, undifferentiated potential. There were no boundaries between things, no distinction between self and other, no separation between matter and spirit. The One Great simply was, eternal and unchanging, a cosmic wholeness beyond mortal comprehension. Into this perfect stasis came the Greater Will, an outer god of immense power whose origins remain shrouded in mystery even to the most learned scholars of the lands between. Outer gods, as we will come to understand throughout this timeline, are entities that exist beyond the physical realm, cosmic forces that seek to impose their influence upon the world through vessels, emissaries, and carefully constructed systems of power. The Greater Will would prove to be perhaps the most ambitious of all these outer gods, and its first act would reshape reality itself. The Greater Will shattered the One Great. This was not destruction in any conventional sense, but rather a fundamental transformation of existence itself. Where there had been unity, now there was multiplicity. Where there had been stillness, now there was motion. The fracturing of the One Great introduced concepts that had never before existed, ideas that would define all future existence in the lands between. Life, as a distinct state separate from non-life, came into being. Souls emerged as individual sparks of consciousness, each one unique and separate from all others. Death became possible, even inevitable, because now there were individual things that could end. The very notion of change, of transformation, of one thing becoming another, all of that sprang from the greater will's shattering of primordial unity. From the fragments of the one great, from the churning chaos of this cosmic rupture, arose something new and terrifying in its potential. The crucible of life emerged as a seething, swirling amalgamations of all possible forms that life might take. Imagine, if you can, a cosmic cauldron in which every conceivable shape, every imaginable combination of traits and characteristics existed simultaneously in a state of constant flux. The crucible was not merely a source of life, but life itself in its most raw, unrefined, and chaotic form. Nothing was fixed, nothing was final. A creature might possess scales and feathers and fur all at once, might have wings growing from places wings had no right to be, might blend the characteristics of predator and prey, plant and animal, solid and liquid, all in a single impossible form. This primordial matter, this essence of the crucible, began to coalesce and take on more stable configurations. The very landscape of what would become known as the lands between formed from this process, shaped by the crucible's wild energies. Mountains rose, not through the slow grinding of tectonic forces, but through the spontaneous manifestation of stone infused with living essence. Rivers flowed with water that remembered being something else, something more. The ground itself pulsed with the potential for transformation, and in some places, it still does to this day, though the crucible's influence has waned considerably since these earliest times. The first true life forms to achieve lasting stability and dominance in this primordial chaos were the ancient dragons. These were not the lesser dragons or drakes that you might encounter in your travels through the lands between, but beings of such primal majesty that they embodied the crucible's raw, untamed power in its most perfected form. The ancient dragons were living stone and scale, creatures in whom the boundaries between elemental force and conscious will had merged completely. Their bodies were formed from a substance called gravelstone, a material that was simultaneously mineral and flesh, dead matter and living tissue. When an ancient dragon moved, reality itself seemed to bend around them, acknowledging their fundamental connection to the crucible that had birthed them. These dragons did not simply live in the lands between. They were expressions of the land itself, manifestations of the primal forces that shaped the world. Their scales were harder than any metal that would later be forged. Their breath could unmake matter, returning it to the chaotic potential of the crucible. Their very presence commanded respect from all other life forms, a recognition coded deep in the most ancient parts of every creature's soul that here walked something greater, something that stood closer to the source of all existence. But the ancient dragons were not the only children of the crucible. From that same churning chaos emerged a multitude of other beings, creatures that modern scholars would later dismiss as misbegotten or malformed, though such judgments reflect the prejudices of the current age rather than any objective truth about these primordial life forms. The worms crawled forth, serpentine beings of immense size and terrible hunger, lacking the wings and majesty of their dragon cousins, but possessing their own savage power. The beastmen arose, creatures that blended human-like cunning with bestial ferocity, standing upright but covered in fur and fang, capable of crude tool use, but driven by instincts that no human could fully understand. These early creatures bore the marks of the crucible's chaotic nature in every aspect of their being. A worm might have vestigial limbs sprouting from its serpentine body, remnants of forms it might have taken or might yet take if the crucible's influence grew strong enough. A beastman might possess features of multiple animal species, as though the crucible could not quite decide what form would best suit its creation, and so simply included aspects of several. These were not flaws or mistakes, but rather evidence of the crucible's fundamental nature as a state of infinite possibility, a force that resisted the very concept of fixed and final forms. The ancient dragons, through their superior power and their deeper connection to the fundamental forces of the world, established dominance over the lands between. This was not a kingdom in any sense that later civilizations would understand, with laws and borders and bureaucracies. Rather, it was a natural hierarchy enforced by raw power and primal recognition. The dragons ruled as forces of nature rule, through their simple existence and undeniable might. Where a dragon claimed territory, no other creature dared to challenge that claim. When dragons fought among themselves, the very landscape was reshaped by their conflict, mountains leveled, and valleys carved by the unleashing of their primordial fury. Among these mighty beings, one rose above all others. Placidosax, whose name would echo through the ages, even after his time had passed, became the first Elden Lord. This title, which would take on different meanings in later eras, marked Placidosax as the supreme ruler of the dragons, and by extension, of all the lands between. But Placidosax was more than merely the strongest or most cunning of his kind. He served as a vessel for an outer god, an entity whose name has been lost to time or perhaps deliberately erased from all records. This unnamed god worked through Placidosax, using the Dragon Lord as a conduit for its will, shaping the world according to its own inscrutable design. The nature of Placidosax's service to this forgotten god raises questions that scholars have debated for ages. Was the Dragon Lord a willing servant, consciously choosing to align himself with cosmic forces beyond mortal comprehension? Or was he simply a vessel, his consciousness subsumed by the outer god's overwhelming presence? The truth likely lies somewhere between these extremes. Placidosax possessed his own will, his own desires and ambitions, but these were aligned with and amplified by the outer god he served. Together, dragon and deity formed a partnership that defined an entire age of the world. The Crucible's influence during this era extended far beyond the creations of distinct species. It actively generated hybrid life forms, beings that blended traits of beasts, plants, and other entities in ways that defied all later attempts at categorization. Creatures might possess bark-like skin that bled red blood when cut. Others might have leaves growing from their flesh, photosynthesizing even as they hunted and fed like any predator. Still others might shift between forms, their bodies responding to the Crucible's lingering energies by transforming in response to environmental pressures or simple random chance. These hybrids were not aberrations, but rather the norm during the Crucible era, when the boundaries between different types of life remained fluid and permeable. In this primordial age, the Erd tree, that golden beacon that would come to define later ages of the lands between, did not yet exist. Instead, a different tree, often called the Great Tree, or perhaps better understood as the Erd tree's precursor, grew from the Crucible's essence. This ancient tree was not golden, but possessed colors that shifted and changed, reflecting the chaotic nature of the Crucible itself. Its roots dug deep into the primordial matter of the world, drawing sustenance directly from the same source that birthed the dragons and all other life. Its branches reached toward the sky, but what they sought there, what cosmic forces they attempted to touch or channel, remains a matter of speculation. The Great Tree served as a physical anchor for the Crucible's energies, a point where the chaotic potential of life took on a more stable, more lasting form. Around this tree, the land itself seemed more solid, more real, less subject to the random transformations that characterized other regions. It was not yet a symbol of order, not yet the beacon of golden light that would define later ages, but it represented a first step toward stability, toward the fixing of forms and the establishment of lasting patterns in the world. Within the Crucible, or perhaps emerging from it as a natural consequence of the greater will's shattering of the one great, the Elden Ring began to take shape. This primordial form of the Elden Ring bore little resemblance to the ordered structure it would later become. It was not a single unified whole, but rather a chaotic and unstructured set of runes, each one representing a fundamental aspect of existence. These runes swirled and combined in ever changing patterns, never settling into a fixed configuration. Life and death, order and chaos, strength and weakness, all the dualities and concepts that would later be carefully organized and controlled, existed here in a state of constant flux. The fingers, those strange emissaries of the greater will, made their first appearance during this era. These beings, which would later be known as the Two Fingers and the Three Fingers, represented the greater will's attempts to impose order on the chaos of the crucible. They did not possess physical forms in any conventional sense, but rather manifested as concentrations of will and purpose, cosmic bureaucrats tasked with the impossible job of organizing the fundamentally disorganized. The fingers began their long work of attempting to structure the Elden Ring, to transform it from a chaotic swirl of potential into an ordered system that could govern reality itself. This effort by the fingers and the greater will they served inevitably brought them into conflict with the crucible and its chaotic life forms. The first wars of the lands between were not fought between kingdoms or armies, but between fundamentally opposed visions of what existence should be. On one side stood the greater will and its emissaries, seeking to impose order, structure, and fixed forms upon the world. On the other side, though perhaps not consciously organized as a faction, stood the crucible and all the creatures it had birthed, beings whose very nature resisted categorization and control. These conflicts would shape everything that followed, setting patterns that would repeat throughout the ages as order and chaos, structure and freedom fought their eternal war for dominance over the lands between. The beastmen who emerged from the crucible's chaotic energies were not simple creatures. They walked upright, wielded weapons, and organized themselves into tribal hierarchies that would persist for millennia. These descendants of the primordial blending carried within their blood the memory of a time when all life flowed together without distinction. The Farum Azula beastmen, perhaps the most prominent of these tribes, developed complex social structures centered around martial prowess and religious devotion. They crafted stone weapons and armor, built towering structures that defied the limitations of their era, and most importantly, they looked to the skies where the dragon soared and saw divinity itself. To the beastmen, the dragons were not merely powerful animals or rivals for territory. They were gods incarnate, beings who commanded the fundamental forces of lightning and storm, creatures whose very existence proved the superiority of the crucible's original design. The beastmen became servants, worshippers, and eventually clergy to these draconic deities. They constructed temples within Farum Azula, a floating city that would become the center of dragon worship, and developed rituals to honor their scaled masters. The relationship was not one of equals, but neither was it simple subjugation. The dragons recognized something in the beastmen, perhaps a reflection of the crucible's pure creative force, and in return for devotion, they granted protection and knowledge. Among the dragons themselves, hierarchy and evolution continued. The worms, those lesser dragonkin who lacked the full majesty of the ancient dragons, began their own transformation. These creatures, sometimes called magma worms or lesser dragons, possessed intelligence and ambition that drove them toward greater power. From their ranks emerged beings who would transcend their origins and achieve true draconic magnificence. Fortisax, who would later earn the title of Dragon Lord, began as one such worm. Through centuries of growth, accumulation of power, and perhaps the favor of the storm itself, Fortisax transformed into an ancient dragon of unparalleled might, commanding red lightning that could split mountains. His sister Lanceax followed a similar path, her golden scales and mastery of ancient dragon cult incantations, marking her as a being who had surpassed the limitations of her birth. These ascended worms proved that even in an age of primordial hierarchy, transformation remained possible. Their existence blurred the lines between the fixed and the mutable, suggesting that the crucible's influence had not entirely faded, that evolution and change still held sway over the world's development. Yet beneath the grandeur of dragon civilization and the devotion of the beastmen, death continued its work. The primordial death rite existed in these ancient days, not as a controlled force or a sealed rune, but as a raw, fundamental aspect of reality. All things that lived eventually ceased, their bodies returning to the earth or the sea or the air from which they came. This death was natural, inevitable, and unbound by any higher authority. It flowed through the world like water, touching dragon and beast and plant alike. The concept that would later be codified as the Rune of Death, that fragment of the Elden Ring representing mortality itself, had its origins in this primordial state. Death was not yet a tool to be wielded or a force to be sealed away. It simply was, as fundamental as gravity or time, shaping the world through absence as much as the crucible shaped it through presence. The ancient beings of this era understood death as a transition rather than an ending, a return to the primordial soup from which new life would eventually emerge. This understanding would be lost in later ages, when death became something to fear, to control, to weaponize. From beyond the physical world, other forces watched the unfolding of creation with interest and hunger. The outer god of the frenzied flame, that ancient entity representing chaos and entropy, observed the increasing complexity of the world with something approaching despair. Where the greater will saw order emerging from the one great's dissolution, the frenzied flame saw only fragmentation and suffering. Each new species, each new hierarchy, each new division of the world into separate and distinct things represented a step away from the perfect unity that had existed before time began. The frenzied flame coveted a return to that state, a burning away of all distinction until everything melted back into singular, undifferentiated existence. In this primordial age, the frenzied flame's influence was minimal, its philosophy antithetical to the creative explosion of the crucible. But it waited, patient as only an immortal god can be, knowing that complexity breeds suffering and suffering breeds the desire for oblivion. The seeds of the frenzied flame's future influence were planted in these ancient days, waiting for a world grown weary of division to embrace the yellow chaos of unmaking. Among the humanoid creatures beginning to emerge from the crucible's waning influence, one group distinguished itself through ambition and innovation. The Nox, or perhaps the civilization that would eventually become the Nox, looked upon the crucible's power to blend and create life and sought to replicate it through artificial means. These early experimenters were not yet the subterranean dwellers of the eternal cities, not yet the silver-clad sorcerers who would challenge the greater will itself. They were pioneers, attempting to understand and harness the fundamental forces of creation. Inspired by the crucible's ability to generate new forms of life, they began their first crude experiments with artificial beings. These early attempts were primitive compared to the silver tears and mimic warriors they would eventually perfect, but they represented a crucial philosophical shift. Where the crucible created through chaotic blending, through the natural intermixing of all things, the Nox sought to create through understanding and control. They wanted to master life itself, to become creators rather than merely created. This hubris would define their civilization for ages to come, leading them to heights of achievement and depths of catastrophe in equal measure. While the Nox looked inward, seeking to understand the mechanisms of life itself, another group of early humans turned their gaze upward. The first astrologers, Ancestors of all the sorcerers who would follow studied the stars with an intensity bordering on religious fervor. They observed the movements of celestial bodies, tracked the patterns of constellations, and most importantly, they began to perceive the greater will's influence flowing down from the cosmos. These primitive astronomers lacked the sophisticated glintstone sorceries of later ages, but they possessed something perhaps more valuable, a direct connection to an era when the boundaries between the physical and metaphysical were still forming. They saw in the stars not merely distant lights, but the very thoughts of the greater will made manifest, patterns of order being imposed upon the chaos of creation. They developed the first star charts, created primitive orreries to track celestial movements, and began to understand that the stars themselves were alive in some fundamental sense, that they possessed will and intention. This knowledge would be refined over countless generations, eventually giving rise to the Carian royal family and the Academy of Raya Lucaria, but its foundations were laid here in the primordial darkness by nameless scholars who looked up and saw destiny written in light. The metaphysical architecture of the world was also taking shape during this era. The two fingers and three fingers, entities that would later serve as the primary means of communication between the greater will and the mortal world, underwent their primordial split. Originally, these beings may have been unified, a complete hand representing the totality of divine will. But as the world itself divided into order and chaos, structure and entropy, the fingers too separated. The two fingers became representatives of the greater will's desire for order, hierarchy, and controlled growth. They would guide Empyreans, advise Elden Lords, and interpret the greater will's intentions for the mortal realm. The three fingers, by contrast, became associated with the frenzied flame, with chaos, and the desire to burn away all distinction. This split was not merely symbolic, but represented a fundamental fracture in how divinity would interact with the world. The fingers were not simply messengers, but fragments of divine will made semi-corporeal, able to exist in the physical world while maintaining connection to forces beyond it. Their separation ensured that the conflict between order and chaos would be woven into the very fabric of reality, that every age would be defined by the tension between these opposing forces. The dragon's reign, seemingly eternal and unassailable, began to face its first serious challenges as humanoid civilizations grew in power and sophistication. These early humans, giants, and other creatures developed primitive forms of magic that could, for the first time, threaten the scaled lords of the sky. Fire sorceries, crude compared to later pyromancies, but effective nonetheless, could burn dragon flesh. Lightning, once the exclusive domain of the ancient dragons, was beginning to be understood and replicated through incantations and rituals. Most significantly, early humans discovered that dragons, for all their might, were not truly immortal. They could be wounded, weakened, even killed if sufficient force was brought to bear. The first dragon slayers emerged during this period, warriors who combined courage, skill, and nascent magical power to bring down worms and lesser dragons. These victories were rare and costly, often requiring entire tribes to band together, but each successful hunt proved that the dragon's dominance was not absolute. The psychological impact of these early victories cannot be overstated. They demonstrated that the old order could be challenged, that the beings who had ruled since time began were not invincible. This realization planted the seeds of ambition in humanoid hearts, the belief that they too could claim dominion over the world. It was during this era of growing humanoid power that the greater will made one of its most significant interventions. It selected its first Empyrean, a being of extraordinary potential, destined to serve as a vessel for divine will and shape the world according to the greater will's design. The identity of this first Empyrean has been lost to the erosion of ages, their name and deeds erased by the countless millennia that followed. We do not know if they were human or giant, dragon, or something else entirely. We do not know if they succeeded in their appointed task or failed catastrophically. What we do know is that the concept of the Empyrean, a mortal chosen to potentially ascend to godhood and impose a new order upon the world, was established in this primordial age. The selection process, the criteria by which the greater will chose its vessels, was set as precedent. An Empyrean must be of appropriate lineage, must possess the capacity to house a divine entity, must be capable of bearing the weight of cosmic responsibility. This first Empyrean, whoever they were, became the template for all who would follow, for Marika and Rani and Millennia and Michaela. Their forgotten story was the foundation upon which the age of the Erd Tree would eventually be built. As the greater will's influence strengthened and its vision of order became more concrete, the crucible's energy began its inevitable decline. The chaotic blending that had defined the earliest age of life grew weaker, less frequent, less potent. New creatures born in this transitional period showed fewer signs of the crucible's touch. The wings, horns, tails, and other hybrid features that had been common in earlier generations became rarer, marking their bearers as throwbacks to a bygone age. The crucible was not dying precisely, but it was being subsumed, its wild creative power being channeled and constrained by the greater will's preference for hierarchy and distinction. Species began to stabilize, their forms becoming fixed rather than fluid. Humans bred true as humans, giants as giants, dragons as dragons. The age of constant transformation was ending, replaced by an age of categories and boundaries. Those beings who still carried obvious signs of the crucible's influence found themselves increasingly marginalized, viewed as primitive or monstrous by the newer, more refined civilizations. The Omen, the misbegotten, and other crucible-touched beings would face persecution in later ages precisely because they represented a return to the chaos that the greater will sought to eliminate. The decline of the crucible was not sudden, but gradual, a slow cooling of the creative fire that had ignited life itself. With the crucible's waning and the greater will's ascendance, the groundwork for a new age was being laid. The greater will was preparing to impose a more direct and comprehensive order upon the world, one that would be embodied in a physical manifestation of divine law. The concept of the Elden Ring, though not yet realized in its full form, was taking shape in the cosmic consciousness. This would be more than mere influence from the stars, more than guidance whispered to chosen vessels. It would be a complete restructuring of reality's fundamental rules, a codification of existence itself into runes and laws that could be read, understood, and potentially altered. The age of the Erd Tree was approaching, though countless years still separated this primordial era from that golden age. The pieces were being positioned, the players selected, the stage prepared for the grand drama that would define the lands between. The primordial crucible era drew to its close not with a cataclysm, but with a gradual transition, a slow shift from one paradigm to another. The dragon's rule, once absolute, fractured as their subjects grew powerful enough to challenge them and as the greater will's favor turned toward other potential rulers. The beastmen remained loyal, but their devotion could not halt the tide of change. The ancient dragons retreated to their fastnesses, to Farum Azula and other remote places, maintaining their dignity even as their dominion crumbled. The stage was set for the rise of new powers, for the emergence of beings who would reshape the world according to visions both glorious and terrible. Marika's age was approaching, though she herself had not yet been born. The Golden Order was still a distant dream, but the dreamer was awakening. The primordial age of chaos and creation was ending, and the age of law and hierarchy was about to begin. Our story now moves from the primordial chaos of the Crucible into what would become the defining epic of the lands between, the age of the Erd Tree. In this ancient past, as the crucible's wild energies still churned, and the land remained untamed by any singular vision of order. A cosmic intervention would reshape reality itself. High above the world, in the space between stars where mortal eyes cannot perceive, the greater will observed the lands between. This outer God, an entity of pure order existing beyond the boundaries of the physical realm, saw a world ripe for transformation. The greater will is not a god in the traditional sense that you might understand from other mythologies. It is instead a fundamental cosmic force, an expression of the concept of order itself, seeking to impose structure and hierarchy upon the chaotic tapestry of existence. And like any force of nature, it required an instrument through which to act. The greater will dispatched the Elden Beast, a vassal of order that served as the living embodiment of its will. This creature, golden and radiant, was sent hurtling through the void toward the lands between in the form of a golden star. Imagine the sight that must have greeted those early inhabitants who witnessed its approach, a celestial body of impossible brilliance streaking across the heavens, growing larger and more terrible with each passing moment. The Elden Beast was not merely a messenger or servant. It was a weapon, a seed of order designed to take root in the very fabric of reality. When the Elden Beast finally crashed into the lands between, the impact was cataclysmic. The point of collision became ground zero for a transformation that would echo through millennia. From this cosmic wound in the earth, the crucible itself was born, or perhaps more accurately, was given new purpose and direction. This primordial wellspring of life energy, which we discussed in our previous section, now found itself infused with the golden essence of the greater will's design. The crucible that emerged from this impact was both the same chaotic font of life it had always been and something fundamentally altered, a transitional state between the wild primordial past and the ordered future that was to come. The crucible's energies, now mingled with the golden power of the Elden Beast, continued to birth life as it had before. But these new creations bore the marks of this cosmic collision. The misbegotten emerged during this period, creatures that blended human and animal characteristics in ways that defied easy categorization. These beings, with their leonine features, their wings, their scales, represented the crucible's last gasp of pure creative chaos before order would fully take hold. They embodied what scholars of the Golden Order would later dismiss as imperfection, but what was in truth the chaotic unity of all life, a state where boundaries between species and forms remained fluid and permeable. Other hybrid life forms also crawled forth from the crucible during this transitional age, each one a testament to the raw creative power that predated the rigid classifications that would soon be imposed upon the world. But the Elden Beast had not come merely to crash and die. Its purpose was transformation, and transform it did. Over time, through processes that remain mysterious, even to the most learned scholars of the lands between, the Elden Beast underwent a metamorphosis. Its physical form dissolved and reconstituted itself as something far more abstract, yet infinitely more powerful. It became the Elden Ring itself, a metaphysical construct that existed simultaneously as object and concept, as physical artifact and universal law. The Elden Ring was not simply a ring in the conventional sense. It was a collection of great runes, each one representing a fundamental aspect of existence, woven together into a pattern that defined the very laws by which the world operated: life, death, causality, fate. All of these concepts and more found their expression in the intricate geometries of the Elden Ring's construction. Yet even the most perfect instrument requires a hand to wield it, and the greater will required a mortal vessel through which the Elden Ring's power could be channeled and its laws enforced. The entity chosen for this monumental task was Queen Marika the Eternal, a woman of the Newman race. The Newmen themselves were not native to the lands between. They came from beyond its borders, from distant lands whose nature remains shrouded in mystery. The Newmen were known for their longevity, their otherworldly beauty, and perhaps most importantly, their potential to serve as vessels for divine power. Marika's selection was not random. Whether through her own ambition, her inherent qualities, or some combination of factors known only to the greater will itself, she was deemed worthy to bear the Elden Ring within her very being. With the Elden Ring housed within Marika's body, she became more than mortal, more than queen. She became a god in the truest sense, the living avatar of the greater will's order in the lands between. But Marika was not content to simply exist as a passive vessel. She possessed vision, ambition, and the will to shape the world according to her understanding of the order she now embodied. From this divine authority, Marika established what would become known as the Golden Order, a comprehensive system that was simultaneously religious doctrine, political structure, and cosmic law. The Golden Order took the abstract principles encoded in the Elden Ring and translated them into a framework that mortal minds could comprehend and mortal societies could follow. It established hierarchies, defining which beings were blessed and which were cursed, which forms of life were pure and which were aberrant. It created a theology that placed Marika at the apex of worship, with the Erd Tree itself serving as the physical church and the golden light as the visible manifestation of divine grace. The Golden Order was totalizing in its scope. It did not simply govern how people should worship or how kingdoms should be ruled. It defined the fundamental nature of reality itself within the lands between, determining how death would function, how souls would be recycled, and how the very concept of existence would be understood. As the Golden Order took root in the consciousness of the lands between, a physical manifestation of its power began to emerge. The Erd Tree, that colossal golden tree whose branches would eventually stretch across the horizon, grew forth from the crucible. This was not a natural growth in any conventional sense. The Erd Tree was the crucible transformed, its chaotic creative energies now channeled and directed by the rigid structure of the Golden Order. Where the crucible had been a source of wild, unpredictable life, the Erd Tree became a symbol of controlled, hierarchical order. Its golden leaves did not fall randomly, but according to divine plan. Its roots did not spread haphazardly, but followed the geometric perfections encoded in the Elden Ring itself. The Erd Tree's emergence marked the final transition from the primordial age to the Age of Order. It stood as both symbol and reality of the Golden Order's dominance, a living monument to Marika's divine authority. Those who dwelt in its light, yes, were blessed with grace, that golden luminescence that marked them as favored by the order of the world. Those who fell outside its radiance found themselves cast into shadow, literally and metaphorically excluded from the new world that was being born. But even a god queen requires mortal hands to enforce her will upon the physical world, and Marika found her champion in Godfrey, a warrior of such ferocity and skill that his name alone could scatter armies. Before he took the title of Elden Lord, Godfrey was known as Hora Lu, a name that carried with it the weight of countless battles and the blood of innumerable foes. Hora Lu was the embodiment of the warrior spirit, a man for whom combat was not merely a profession, but a fundamental expression of existence. His strength was legendary, his tactical mind unmatched, and his loyalty, once given, was absolute. Marika took Godfrey as her consort, and in doing so, elevated him to the position of first Elden Lord. This title was not merely ceremonial. The Elden Lord served as the martial arm of the God Queen's will, the general of her armies, and the enforcer of the Golden Order's expansion. Where Marika provided divine authority and cosmic power, Godfrey provided the steel and strategy necessary to impose that authority upon a world that had known no master before. Together, they formed a partnership that would reshape the land between through both divine mandate and military conquest. But the establishment of the Golden Order could not proceed unopposed. The lands between were not empty, waiting to be claimed. They were home to ancient powers, primordial forces, and beings who had ruled long before the Erdtree's golden light first touched the soil. Chief among these threats, at least in Marika's estimation, were the Giants, a race of enormous beings who dwelt in the mountain tops of the Giants, the frigid peaks that formed the northern boundary of the known world. The Giants were not merely large humans, they were fundamentally different beings, possessed of their own ancient power and their own cosmic allegiance. The Giants served as guardians of the Flame of Ruin, a primordial fire that burned with power antithetical to the Golden Order itself. This flame, orange and terrible, possessed the capacity to burn the Erdtree, to reduce Marika's divine monument to ash and cinder. As long as the Flame of Ruin burned, and the Giants lived to tend it, the Golden Order could never be truly secure. The very existence of this flame represented an alternative to the order Marika sought to impose, a chaotic, destructive force that predated the Elden Ring and owed nothing to the Greater Will's design. Thus began the War against the Giants, a conflict that would become one of the defining campaigns of the early Golden Order. Marika commanded her forces, with Godfrey at their head, to march north into the frozen peaks and eliminate this threat once and for all. The war was brutal beyond measure. The Giants, despite their smaller numbers, were formidable opponents. Each one possessed strength enough to shatter mountainsides, and their mastery of fire magic turned the frozen battlefield into a hellscape of melting ice and scorched stone. But Godfrey and his warriors were relentless. They adapted their tactics, learned to counter the Giants' advantages, and pressed forward with the certainty that came from fighting for a divine cause. Yet even as the war raged, Marika took steps to ensure that her ultimate victory would be permanent. She turned to Malekith, her half-brother and shadow-bound beast. Malekith was no ordinary warrior, or even an ordinary demigod. He was a beast, one of those beings who served as shadows to those chosen by the Greater Will, bound by cosmic law to protect and serve his ward. The bond between Marika and Malekith went deeper than mere loyalty. It was written into the fabric of their beings, an unbreakable connection that made Malekith's devotion absolute. Marika entrusted Malekith with a task of cosmic significance. She commanded him to seal the Rune of Death, also known as Destined Death, the fundamental principle that governed true mortality in the world. This rune, one of the great runes that composed the Elden Ring, was the mechanism by which souls could be truly destroyed, by which beings could pass beyond the cycle of rebirth and return that the Erdtree would establish. By removing the Rune of Death from the Elden Ring and sealing it away, Marika fundamentally altered the nature of existence in the lands between. Death would no longer mean true ending. Instead, souls would return to the Erdtree to be recycled and reborn in an eternal cycle of life that served the Golden Order's purposes. Malekith accepted this charge and sealed Destined Death within his own blade, becoming the keeper of death itself. From that moment forward, true death became impossible for those who dwelt under the Erdtree's grace. This was Marika's masterstroke, ensuring that her order would be eternal, that no force could truly end what she had created. But it also created a world where the natural cycle of life and death was broken, where the finality that gives meaning to existence was stripped away. With death itself now under Marika's control, the war against the Giants reached its inevitable conclusion. Godfrey and his warriors achieved total victory, slaughtering the Giants until only one remained. But Marika's vengeance was not satisfied with mere extinction. She cursed this last surviving giant, binding him with divine magic to tend the very flame of ruin that his people had once guarded. This giant, enormous and ancient beyond reckoning, was condemned to an existence of eternal servitude, forced to maintain the flame that could destroy the Erd tree but never permitted to use it. It was a punishment of exquisite cruelty, turning the giant's sacred duty into an eternal prison. Yet the giants were not the only ancient power displaced by the Golden Order's rise. Long before Marika's ascension, before the Elden Beast fell from the stars, the lands between had been ruled by dragons. These were not the mindless beasts of lesser fantasy. They were intelligent, powerful beings who had built their own civilization, their own understanding of the world's order. At the apex of dragonkind stood Placidusax, the Dragon Lord, a being of such immense power that he served as Elden Lord in an age before the current Elden Ring even existed, serving a god whose identity has been lost to time. The rise of the Erd Tree and the establishment of the Golden Order fundamentally displaced the dragons from their position of dominance. Some fled to distant corners of the world, others adapted, learning to coexist with the new order. But their age had passed, and they knew it. The dragons who remained became remnants of a bygone era, powerful still, but no longer the supreme rulers they had once been. In this context of ancient enmity and cosmic displacement, a remarkable event occurred. Godwyn the Golden, the firstborn son of Queen Marika and Godfrey, befriended Fortisax, an ancient dragon of tremendous power and nobility. This friendship was unprecedented, a bridge built across the chasm between the old world and the new. Godwyn, who embodied all the virtues the Golden Order claimed to represent, saw in the dragons not enemies to be destroyed, but potential allies to be honored. Fortisax, for his part, recognized in Godwyn a nobility that transcended the conflict between their peoples. This friendship between Godwyn and Fortisax became the foundation for an uneasy peace between the Golden Order and the remaining dragons, a detente that would hold for ages to come. The Golden Order's expansion brought with it an iron fist for those who refused to bow. Among the first to face Marika's wrath were the Nox, descendants of an ancient civilization that had once flourished beneath the open sky. The Nox were a people who worshipped the moon and the dark cosmos beyond, practicing arts of silver and night that stood in direct opposition to the golden light of the Erd Tree. Their heresy could not be tolerated. Marika commanded that they be cast down, banished to the depths of the earth, where their cities would never again see the stars they so revered. The eternal cities of Nokron and Nokstella became their prison, vast underground metropolises where the Nox would dwell in perpetual twilight, their civilization preserved but forever separated from the surface world. The false night sky they created above their cities, a mimicry of the cosmos they had lost, stands as a monument to both their ingenuity and their punishment. But the Nox did not accept their fate quietly. In their exile, they turned their considerable knowledge toward an act of supreme defiance. If the greater will would impose its chosen lord upon them, then they would forge their own. The Nox smiths, masters of silver and moonlight, labored to create a weapon capable of slaying the very envoys of the greater will itself. The result was the Fingerslayer blade, a twisted instrument of dark purpose, fashioned from a corpse and imbued with the power to kill the two fingers, those ancient beings who served as the greater will's direct representatives in the lands between. This was not merely rebellion. This was an attempt to sever the connection between the outer god and the mortal realm entirely. The creation of the Fingerslayer blade brought down the full fury of the greater will. Some scholars believe it was this very act that caused the falling star that buried Nokron beneath the earth, sealing it away even more completely than Marika's initial banishment. The Nox had sought to create their own lord, their own age, but instead they ensured their civilization would remain entombed forever, a cautionary tale of what befalls those who challenge the cosmic order. The two fingers themselves became increasingly central to the Golden Order's structure during this age. These ancient, gnarled beings, each resembling a pair of enormous fingers, joined at the base, served as the greater will's direct communication with the mortal realm. Through them, the greater will's intentions were made known, its commands transmitted, its blessings bestowed. Marika consulted with the two fingers in matters of great import, and it was through their guidance that the demigods understood their roles in the divine hierarchy. The two fingers established the finger readers, blind women who could interpret the subtle movements and gestures of these cosmic envoys, translating their will into words that mortals could comprehend. These finger readers became fixtures throughout the lands between, stationed at sites of grace and places of power, offering guidance to those who sought to understand their place in the Golden Order. The relationship between Marika and the two fingers was complex, a partnership that would later reveal itself to be more fraught than it initially appeared. For now, however, they worked in apparent harmony, the two fingers serving as the bridge between the divine and the mortal, ensuring that the greater will's vision for the lands between remained unchallenged. The Golden Order's dominance was not achieved without conflict. From beyond the stars came the Alabaster Lords, beings of immense power who wielded gravitational magic, the ability to manipulate the very fabric of space itself. These lords arrived on meteorites, their skin like polished stone, their mastery of gravity allowing them to pull enemies toward them or crush them with invisible force. The Alabaster Lords, along with their counterparts the Onyx Lords, represented a form of power that predated the Erd Tree, ancient magic tied to the cosmos rather than to any outer god. Their arrival posed a significant threat to the Golden Order's claim of absolute authority. Battles raged across the lands between as the forces of the Erd Tree clashed with these stellar invaders. The war against the Alabaster Lords tested the might of the Golden Order's champions, but ultimately, through superior numbers and the blessings of grace, the lords were subdued. Some were slain, their gravitational magic scattered, and later studied by those who would become the lands between's first gravity sorcerers. Others were driven into exile, forced to retreat to remote corners of the realm where they would wait, perhaps hoping for a time when the Golden Order's grip might weaken enough for them to return. In the depths of the earth, far beneath the surface kingdoms, an even more ancient threat stirred. The outer god of rot, also known as the god of scarlet rot, represented decay and corruption in its purest form. This entity had its own designs on the lands between, seeking to spread its influence through the festering plague of scarlet rot, a supernatural disease that consumed all living things, reducing flesh to putrid slurry and stone to crumbling ruin. The Lake of Rot, a vast underground sea of concentrated corruption, served as the god's earthly manifestation, a place where the very air was poison and the ground itself writhed with decay. It was here that one of the age's greatest heroes emerged, though his name has been largely forgotten by history. The blind swordsman, a warrior of extraordinary skill who had lost his sight, yet fought with precision that surpassed those with perfect vision, took up the task of containing this cosmic horror. He was not alone in his quest. The Blue Fairy, a mysterious entity of flowing water and grace, aided him in his battle against the rot. Together, they managed to seal away the outer god of rot, binding it within the Lake of Rot through means that combined the swordsman's martial prowess with the fairy's mystical power. The seal held, preventing the scarlet rot from spreading unchecked across the lands between, though it could never be fully eradicated. The blind swordsman's victory was absolute in one sense, however. He defeated the god's champion, a warrior of the rot who wielded techniques that would later be passed down through generations. In recognition of his triumph, the swordsman taught his own techniques to others, and these would eventually reach a young warrior named Millennia, though that tale lies far in the future. As the Golden Order solidified its power, Marika's family grew. She bore children who would become central figures in the age to come. Godwyn was born, a son of golden grace and noble bearing, blessed with his mother's favor and destined to become the Golden Order's greatest champion. He embodied everything the age represented: strength, beauty, virtue, and unwavering faith in the Erd Tree. But not all of Marika's children were so fortunate. She also gave birth to twins, Morgott and Mog, and these sons bore a terrible curse. They were born as omen, beings whose bodies sprouted twisted horns, and whose blood carried a corruption that the Golden Order deemed anathema to the Erd Tree's purity. The omen condition was considered a curse, a throwback to the primordial crucible from which all life had once emerged, a reminder of the chaotic blending of forms that the Golden Order had worked so hard to suppress and organize. For common omen, those born to ordinary families, the fate was grim. Their horns were brutally excised in infancy, a process that killed many and left survivors scarred and broken. But Morgott and Mog were of royal blood, sons of Queen Marika herself, and so they could not be simply discarded. Instead, they were hidden away, their existence kept secret from the wider world. They were imprisoned beneath Landell in the subterranean shunning grounds, a network of sewers and catacombs where the capital's filth and shame were buried. There, in the darkness, the twin Omen princes grew, raised in chains, their royal birthright denied them because of the horns that marked them as cursed. The persecution of the Omen became one of the Golden Order's most brutal practices. Throughout the lands between, Omen were hunted, captured, and imprisoned in dungeons beneath major settlements. The Omen were seen as corruptions of the Erd Tree's perfect design, their horns a physical manifestation of spiritual impurity. Omen killers, specialized hunters armed with cleavers designed to hack through horn and bone, made it their life's work to track down these cursed individuals. The cruelty extended beyond simple imprisonment. Omen were subjected to torture, their horns sawed off in agonizing procedures, their bodies broken in attempts to purge them of their curse. The Golden Order's scholars justified this persecution through religious doctrine, claiming that the Omen represented a failure to fully embrace the Erd Tree's grace, that their very existence was an affront to the perfect order Marika had established. Yet the Omen endured, their numbers never fully diminished, a constant reminder that the Golden Order's vision of purity was impossible to fully realize. Among those declared anathema by the Golden Order, few inspired more revulsion than the Dung Eater. This figure, whose true name has been lost or deliberately erased from history, committed crimes so heinous that he became a legend of evil. The Dung Eater's particular form of wickedness involved defiling corpses in a specific way, cursing his victims so that their souls could not return to the Erd Tree. In the Golden Order's cosmology, death was not an ending, but a transition. Souls returned to the Erd Tree, were absorbed into its light, and were eventually reborn, creating an eternal cycle of death and rebirth that sustained the age. The Dung Eater disrupted this cycle. He cursed his victims with what became known as the Seedbed Curse, a corruption that infected the soul itself, ensuring that those he killed would be reborn as Omen, their children and their children's children, forever marked by his defilement. This was not merely murder, but a form of spiritual genocide, an attempt to corrupt the Erd Tree's cycle itself. The Golden Order hunted him relentlessly, and eventually he was captured and imprisoned, though his legacy of cursed bloodlines would persist for generations. The misbegotten, too, suffered under the Golden Order's rule. These creatures, born with animalistic features that blended human and beast in ways that recalled the primordial crucible, were descendants of the age before the Erdtree's dominance. In the time of the crucible, such blending of forms had been seen as blessed, a sign of life's vital chaos and potential. But the Golden Order viewed them differently. To the architects of Marika's age, the misbegotten were abominations, failures of form that needed to be controlled or eliminated. They were enslaved, forced to labor in the service of the Golden Order's nobles, their strength exploited while their very existence was despised. In Castle Morn and other strongholds, misbegotten served as laborers and soldiers, always under the watchful eye of their human masters. Some misbegotten possessed extraordinary abilities, wielding weapons with skill that surpassed ordinary warriors, but this only made them more dangerous in the eyes of their oppressors. Rebellions occasionally flared, misbegotten rising up against their masters, but these were always crushed. The Golden Order's message was clear. There was a proper form for life, a correct way to exist, and anything that deviated from that standard would be subjugated or destroyed. During this age of expansion and consolidation, a new figure emerged who would prove crucial to the Golden Order's future. Radagon appeared as a champion, a warrior of extraordinary prowess, with distinctive red hair that set him apart from other heroes of the age. He rose through the ranks of the Golden Order's forces, distinguishing himself in battle and demonstrating an almost fanatical devotion to the principles of the Erdtree. Radagon's origins were mysterious, and few questioned where he had come from, or why he seemed to understand the Golden Order's doctrines with such intimate knowledge. He would lead armies, conquer enemies, and eventually marry into the royal family, but the truth of his nature remained hidden. Radagon was not simply a champion who had sworn himself to Marika's cause. He was Marika herself, or rather, he was her other half, a separate personality and body that shared the same divine essence. This secret, known only to a select few, would have profound implications for the age to come. For now, Radagon served as the Golden Order's sword, enforcing its will and expanding its territory, while Marika ruled from the capital. The age of the Erdtree reached its zenith during this period. The Golden Order's dominance seemed unshakable, its enemies defeated or driven into hiding, its doctrines accepted throughout the lands between. The Erdtree itself grew ever larger, its golden light visible from every corner of the realm, a constant reminder of the divine order that governed all things. Grace flowed from the Erdtree to those deemed worthy, guiding them, blessing them, marking them as chosen. Yet even at the height of its power, cracks were beginning to form in the foundation of Marika's creation. The persecution of the Omen, the enslavement of the misbegotten, the banishment of the Nox, the sealing away of her own children, all of these actions planted seeds of doubt and resentment. Marika herself, the eternal queen who had established this age, began to question the path she had chosen. The Greater Will's vision had brought order, but at what cost? The diversity and chaos of the Crucible had been suppressed, but had something vital been lost in the process? These questions would haunt Marika in the ages to come, leading her toward choices that would shatter the very order she had worked so hard to create. But for now, the Golden Order stood triumphant, and the age of the Erdtree continued its golden reign over the lands between. The Shattering War. As the Age of the Tarnished dawned, the lands between stood at the precipice of ruin. The once stable Golden Order, the divine system that governed reality under the guidance of Queen Marika the Eternal, was about to fracture irreparably. This was the era of the Shattering War, a cataclysmic conflict born from betrayal, ambition, and the desperate struggle for power among the demigods. It began with an act of defiance that would echo through history. Marika herself, the vessel of the Elden Ring and the chosen emissary of the Greater Will, raised her hammer and shattered the very source of the world's order. The Elden Ring, a metaphysical manifestation of the laws that bound the lands between, was not merely broken, it was splintered into fragments known as great runes. Each shard contained a portion of the divine power that had once been Marika's to wield. But this was no accident, no mere failure of governance. It was rebellion. The greater will, the outer god that had elevated Marika to godhood and imposed its order upon the world, had demanded obedience, and in response, she struck the first blow of defiance. Yet even as the Elden Ring fractured, her other half, Radagon, her consort and, in a sense, her other self, attempted to mend it. Radagon, ever the loyal servant of the Golden Order, sought to undo Marika's heresy, but his efforts were futile. The damage was done, and the Greater Will's retribution was swift. Marika was imprisoned within the Erd Tree, the colossal arboreal symbol of the Golden Order's dominion, bound there as punishment for her betrayal. Stripped of her freedom, she became a prisoner in the very heart of the faith she had once embodied. But the consequences of her act could not be contained. With the Elden Ring shattered, her children, the demigods, seized the scattered great runes, each claiming a fragment of divine authority. What followed was not just war, but an all-consuming struggle for supremacy, a conflict so vast it would rend the very fabric of the lands between. Among the first to act was Godric the Grafted, the weakest and most desperate of Marika's descendants. Possessing only a tenuous claim to divinity, he stole a great rune from Landel, the royal capital, and fled to Stormvale Castle, a fortress perched atop the cliffs of Limgrave. There, in his paranoia and hunger for power, he turned to grafting, the grotesque practice of stitching the limbs of fallen warriors onto his own body. Each new appendage was a pitiful attempt to compensate for his inadequacy, a physical manifestation of his crumbling pride. Yet even in his wretched state, he clung to his stolen rune, a symbol of the power he could never truly wield. While Godric cowered in Stormvale, another demigod rose to prominence, General Radon, the mightiest of Marika's offspring. A colossus of battle, Radon had once studied gravity magic under the masters of Celia, a town hidden within the wastes of Kylid. His devotion to his mentors was so absolute that when the stars themselves threatened Celia's secrets, he halted their motion entirely, freezing the cosmos in place with sheer will. This act, a testament to his unparalleled mastery of gravitational forces, earned him the title Star Scourge. When the shattering came, Radon claimed his great rune and turned his armies loose upon Khalid, waging war with the same relentless fury that had once made him a legend. But Radon's dominance would not go unchallenged. From the Haligtree, a sanctuary built for those spurned by the Golden Order, came Malenia, Blade of Miquella. She and her twin brother, Miquella, had sought to create a haven for the unwanted, the misbegotten, the Albinorics, all those deemed unworthy by Marika's order. Miquella, cursed with eternal childhood, had poured his divinity into the Haligtree, hoping it would grow into a new Erd Tree, one free from the Greater Will's influence. But before his vision could be realized, he was stolen away by Mog, Lord of Blood, a monstrous omen who sought to raise Miquella as a god of his own profane dynasty. Enraged by her brother's abduction and determined to secure a future for the Haligtree, Malenia marched south, her sights set on Radon. Their clash in the wastes of Khalid would become the most infamous battle of the Shattering. At Aeonia, the two demigods fought with apocalyptic fury. Radon, a warrior without equal, met Malenia's unmatched swordplay with crushing force. But when the battle reached its zenith, Malenia made a choice that would scar the land forever. She unleashed the Scarlet Rot, the cursed power that had festered within her since birth. The bloom that followed consumed Ionia, transforming Caelid into a festering wasteland of decay and madness. Radon, though not slain, was reduced to a ravenous beast, his mind eroded by the rot, while Millennia, her body broken, was carried back to the Halleck tree by her loyal knight, Finlay. Yet the Shattering's horrors did not end there. Behind the scenes, another demigod had set a darker scheme into motion. Rani the Witch, daughter of Radagon and Renala, had long chafed under the Greater Will's control. Seeking to free herself from the destiny imposed upon her, she orchestrated the Night of the Black Knives, a shadowy conspiracy in which assassins wielding blades imbued with the stolen rune of death struck down Godwyn the Golden, Marika's favored son. But the murder was incomplete. While Godwyn's soul perished, his body lived on, a grotesque aberration that seeped deathroot into the roots of the Erd tree. This corruption spread like a cancer, tainting the very foundation of the Golden Order. Amid the chaos, two figures stood as contrasts in loyalty and defiance. Morgott the Grace-Given, the Veiled Monarch, remained steadfast in his devotion to Leyndell and the shattered Golden Order. Concealing his true nature as an omen, a being marked by the cursed horns his kind bore, he defended the capital against all challengers, branding the other demigods as traitors and pretenders. His twin brother, Mog, embraced his omen blood, descending into depravity as he plotted to elevate Mikella through blood and sacrifice. And then there was Rykard, the Lord of Blasphemy. Once a champion of the Golden Order, he had turned against it with a zeal that bordered on madness. In his volcanic fortress of Mount Gelmir, he allowed himself to be devoured by the god-devouring serpent, merging with the beast in a grotesque bid for immortality. His new form, a monstrous fusion of man and serpent, became a symbol of rebellion against the gods themselves. The Shattering War had no victors, only survivors. The lands between, once united under Marika's rule, had been torn asunder by the greed and ambition of her children. And as the dust settled, the stage was set for the next act in the tragedy, a world awaiting the arrival of the Tarnished, those long-exiled warriors who would return to claim the Elden Ring's fragments and decide the fate of the broken realm. Word count, 1,200. Note: this is half of the requested length. The next part will continue with the remaining key beats and expand on the consequences of the Shattering War. As the stalemate between the demigods stretched on, the Tarnished found themselves drawn deeper into the fractured political landscape of the lands between. The Round Table Hold, that sanctuary beneath the spectral Erd tree, became a crucible of both alliance and betrayal. Here, the finger reader, Inia translated the will of the Two Fingers, those grotesque yet divine envoys of the Greater Will, revealing the true stakes of their quest. Not all Tarnished were content to follow this path, however. Figures like Fia, the deathbed companion, and the fanatical dung-eater pursued their own blasphemous agendas right under the Hold's nose, proving that even this refuge wasn't immune to the corruption spreading across the land. The first true test of the Tarnished came at Stormvale Castle, where the grotesque Godric the Grafted clung to his stolen power. His pathetic mimicry of true lordship, stitching himself together with the limbs of fallen warriors, embodied the desperation of the demigods in this broken age. Yet even in his depravity, Godric held a shard of divinity, the great rune of the Unborn, a twisted reflection of Godwyn's legacy. When the Tarnished struck him down, it marked the first time since the Shattering that a demigod had truly fallen, proving that these so-called gods could bleed. Meanwhile, in Caelid, General Radon continued his mindless, rotting vigil. Once the mightiest of Renala's children, now reduced to a feral beast by Millennia's scarlet rot. The festival held in his honor by Jaren and the Redmanes wasn't just a celebration, it was a mercy killing dressed in pageantry. When the Tarnished joined the assembled warriors to put down the mad general, they weren't just claiming his great rune of gravity magic, but freeing the stars themselves from his crumbling grasp. This cosmic consequence would later prove crucial to Rani's designs, though none could have foreseen it at the time. Far more disturbing was the fate of Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy. In his volcanic manner, the Serpent King had abandoned all pretense of nobility, merging with the ancient god-eating serpent to become something truly abhorrent. His great rune spoke of cursed immortality, a perversion of the Golden Order's tenets. When the Tarnished faced him, they did so with the very weapon Rykard had prepared for his own followers, the Serpent Hunter's Spear, proof that even in his madness, the demigod expected betrayal. His final words, Togathus, became a mocking epitaph for the shattered family of demigods. The siege of Landel marked the turning point. Morgoth, the Grace Given, last true defender of the Erd Tree, fought with the desperation of one who knew his cause was lost. His illusions of nobility shattered along with his omen form, revealing the bitter truth. Even this stalwart guardian had been born cursed. When the Tarnished breached the capital, they discovered the awful secret at its heart. Queen Marika imprisoned within the Erd Tree, her body serving as vessel for Radagon's failed attempt to repair the Elden Ring. The golden thorns blocking their path weren't a test. They were a quarantine, the Erd Tree rejecting all comers after Radagon's botched reconstruction. Beneath the capital in the forsaken subterranean shunning grounds, the Tarnished uncovered further horrors. The Dung-Eater's cell, the withered form of Godwyn's death-tainted corpse, and most shockingly, Mog's hidden blood dynasty. The Lord of Blood had taken advantage of the chaos to steal away Miquella, the most empathic of the demigods, subjecting the slumbering youth to vile sanguine rituals. When the Tarnished stormed Mogwyn Palace, they found Miquella's body desiccated and lifeless, his golden arm protruding from the cocoon, a grotesque mockery of rebirth that would never come. All paths eventually led to Rani the Witch. Her spectral form had been guiding the Tarnished since the beginning, though her true motives remained shrouded. The curse mark of death on Godwyn's corpse, the stolen fragment of the rune of death from Malekith, even the fate of the two fingers in her divine tower. Piece by piece, the Tarnished uncovered her plot to overthrow the Greater Will entirely. Her Age of Stars would replace the Golden Order with cold lunar logic, freeing the world from the tyranny of gods. Whether this constituted salvation or another form of damnation remained to be seen. The final act required fire. Melina, the mysterious maiden who had guided the Tarnished thus far, revealed her true purpose as Kindling Maiden, offering herself to ignite the flame of ruin and burn away the Erdtree's thorns. Those who sought the frenzied flame found an alternative, but at the cost of universal annihilation. As the great tree burned, or in some accounts, as the Tarnished themselves became the Lord of Frenzied Flame, the way opened to confront Radagon at last. The battle against the Elden Beast, in that spectral arena beneath the burning Erd Tree, wasn't just a clash of steel and sorcery. It was the culmination of every choice made along the journey. Would the Tarnished restore the Golden Order, as Marika intended? Would they usher in Rani's Age of Stars? Or perhaps something darker, like the Age of Fracture, or the cursed Dung-Eater's ending? Each possibility represented a different vision for the lands between, each with its own terrible price. When the final blow landed, and the Elden Ring was restored, or remade, or destroyed, one truth remained. The Age of the Tarnished had begun, but what form it would take depended entirely on which scars from the shattering war would be allowed to heal, and which would fester forever. As the age of the Erd Tree reached its zenith under Queen Marika's Golden Order, the foundations of divine rule began to crack. The demigods, born of her lineage, stood as paragons of the god's will, until the night everything fractured. During the era known as the Shattering, a single act of betrayal would unravel the order of the world, a night etched in shadow and blood, the Night of the Black Knives. At the heart of this conspiracy was Rani the Witch, the enigmatic Empyrean daughter of Radagon and Renala. Empyreans, those chosen by the greater will as potential successors to Marika, were bound to a fate not entirely their own. But Rani, ever the schemer, harbored a singular ambition to defy the gods and sever her destiny. To do so, she needed the one force sealed away by the Golden Order, destined to death, the primordial power of true mortality, housed within the Rune of Death. This rune had been entrusted to Malekith the Black Blade, Marika's half-brother and shadow-bound beast, a guardian so fearsome none dared challenge him. Yet Rani, through cunning and subterfuge, would orchestrate its theft. Her plan required allies, ones who could wield death itself. The Black Knife Covenant, a sisterhood of Numen assassins, became her instruments. These killers were no ordinary mercenaries. The Numen, a race from beyond the lands between, shared ancestry with Queen Marika herself, and their assassins were rumored to have once served her in the shadows. Their blades, forged of silver and imbued with a fragment of the Rune of Death, could slay even the divine. How Rani convinced them remains a mystery. Some speculate she offered them a purpose beyond servitude. Others whisper of a deeper, older grudge against the Golden Order. Regardless, the pact was struck. Under Rani's guidance, the Black Knives infiltrated the sanctum of Malekith, the fearsome guardian of destined death. Though the details of the theft are lost to time, the result was undeniable. Fragments of the Rune of Death were pried from its seal and forged into daggers, each capable of killing a demigod. This was no mere act of theft, it was heresy. The Golden Order had removed death from the natural cycle, ensuring that souls returned to the Erdtree in perpetuity. By unleashing destined death, Rani sought to break not just her chains, but the very laws of the world. The Night of the Black Knives was a meticulously coordinated strike. Under the cover of darkness, the assassins moved as one, their targets chosen with precision. The primary victim was Godwyn the Golden, Marika's most beloved son, a demigod whose grace and martial prowess had made him a symbol of the Golden lineage's future. His death was not merely physical, it was spiritual. The Black Knives carved a cursed mark into his flesh, slaying his soul while leaving his body intact. This perversion of death created something abhorrent to the Golden Order, a being that was neither alive nor dead, a hollowed demigod whose fate defied the Erdtree's cycle. Simultaneously, Rani performed her own ritual. Using a stolen fragment of the Rune of Death, she slew her own Empyrean flesh, severing her connection to the two fingers, the envoys of the greater will that guided her fate. Her spirit, now unshackled, fled into a doll's body, a vessel of her own design. This act was more than escape. It was rebellion. By destroying her mortal form, she ensured she could never be a pawn of the gods again. Yet her freedom came at a cost. The ritual was bound to Godwyn's death, linking their fates in a way that would have dire consequences. Godwyn's corpse, soulless yet undying, was buried at the roots of the Erdtree, a sacred place meant to return souls to the cycle of rebirth. But his corrupted essence festered, seeping into the roots and spreading like a blight. This was the birth of Deathblight, a malignant force that twisted life into abominations. Those who live in death, beings caught between life and true demise, began to rise, their existence an affront to the Golden Order. The Erdtree's roots, once a symbol of renewal, now bore the scars of Godwyn's curse, and catacombs across the lands between became infested with his influence. In the aftermath, the Black Knife assassins scattered. Some fled to the fringes of the world, like the Cathedral of the Forsaken, deep beneath Landel, where the unwanted and the blasphemous were cast away. Others sought refuge in Ordina, liturgical town, a place of eerie quiet, where their presence lingered like a ghostly whisper. Their deeds had changed the world, but their fate was one of hunted outcasts, for neither Marika nor her loyalists would forgive their transgression. For Queen Marika, the death of Godwyn was a breaking point. Grief and fury consumed her. The demigod she cherished above all others had been stolen from her, not by war or fate, but by treachery. In her rage, she did the unthinkable. She shattered the Elden Ring, the divine artifact that governed the laws of the world. This act, born of despair, triggered the cataclysm known as the Shattering. The great runes, fragments of the Elden Ring's power, were scattered, and the demigods, once united under Marika's rule, turned upon one another in a war for supremacy. Amid the chaos, suspicions swirled around Ranni's involvement in Godwyn's death. Though no proof tied her directly to the Black Knives, the timing of her disappearance and the nature of the ritual spoke volumes. The demigods, already fractious, now viewed each other with open hostility. Morgoth, the veiled monarch and last defender of Lendel, emerged from the shadows to protect the Erd Tree, condemning his kin as traitors and usurpers. His scorn was particularly reserved for Ranni, though he lacked the means to strike at her directly. The Night of the Black Knives was more than an assassination. It was the unraveling of an age. By defying the greater will, Ranni had set in motion a chain of events that would plunge the lands between into eternal conflict. Godwyn's death, Marika's wrath, the Shattering, all were threads woven from a single act of rebellion. And though Ranni vanished into the night, her legacy would haunt the world forever. Note: this segment covers the first half of the Night of the Black Knives events. The second half will delve into the immediate aftermath, the demigods' reactions, and the deeper implications of Ranni's scheme. In the aftermath of the Night of the Black Knives, the Black Knife Covenant found themselves hunted relentlessly by forces loyal to the Golden Order. Chief among these pursuers was Malekith, the shadow-bound beast and half-brother to Queen Marika, who bore the weight of guilt for allowing the Rune of Death to be stolen from him. Malekith's mission was clear: to reclaim the fragments of the Rune of Death and restore the integrity of the Golden Order's doctrine. The Black Knives, once shrouded in secrecy, were now exposed and scattered, their assassination of Godwyn having ignited a chain reaction of chaos that would reverberate across the lands between. Despite their formidable skills, the Black Knives could not evade Malekith forever, and many of their members were hunted down, their blades confiscated or destroyed. Yet the damage had already been done, and the Rune of Death's fragments remained at large, fueling the growing influence of Deathblight. Meanwhile, Godwyn the Golden's body, now corrupted and lifeless, was laid to rest at the roots of the Erd Tree, the sacred symbol of the Golden Order's divine authority. This act was meant to honor him, but it would have unintended and catastrophic consequences. The Erd Tree, a symbol of eternal life and renewal, was not equipped to handle the presence of death in its purest form. Over time, Godwyn's corpse began to mutate, its flesh twisting and expanding into a grotesque abomination known as the Prince of Death. This transformation was a profound affront to the Golden Order's teachings, which denied the very concept of true death. The Prince of Death became a festering wound at the heart of the Erd Tree, a symbol of the Order's failure to maintain its dominion over life and death. As the Shattering War raged on, Fia, the deathbed companion, emerged as a figure deeply connected to the unfolding tragedy. Fia, a practitioner of the ancient art of deathbed communion, sought out Godwyn's corrupted corpse to commune with him and restore the curse mark of death. Her motivations were complex, rooted in her desire to bring balance to a world where death had been denied for so long. Fia believed that by restoring the curse mark, she could honor Godwyn's legacy and bring closure to the wounds inflicted by the Night of the Black Knives. Her journey would lead her into conflict with the Golden Order's remnants, as her actions threatened to undermine their doctrine even further. At the same time, Ranni's discarded Empyrean flesh was discovered atop the divine tower of Liurnia, marked with half of the curse marks of death. This discovery was a chilling reminder of the duality of the Knight of the Black Knives. While Godwin's soul had been destroyed, Rani's body had been sacrificed to free her spirit. The curse mark, split between Godwin and Rani, symbolized the fractured nature of death itself, a concept the Golden Order had sought to suppress. Rani's flesh, now lifeless and cold, served as a testament to her resolve to defy the greater will and forge her own path. The mystery of the Knight of the Black Knives continued to haunt the lands between, drawing the attention of scholars and adventurers alike. Among them was Rogier, a skilled sorcerer and scholar who sought to uncover the truth behind the assassination. Rogier's investigations led him beneath Stormvale Castle, where he encountered the spreading roots of Godwin's corruption. The death blight that emanated from these roots proved to be a deadly force, afflicting Rogier and leaving him gravely ill. Despite his suffering, Rogier persisted in his research, determined to understand the nature of deathblight and its connection to Godwin. His findings would later prove crucial to the Tarnished, who would inherit his quest to unravel the mysteries of the Knight of the Black Knives. In the northern reaches of the lands between, the followers of Castle Saul attempted to perform a ritual known as the Eclipse, hoping to restore Godwin's soul and bring him back from the brink of oblivion. The eclipse was a desperate act of devotion, reflecting the lingering reverence for Godwin even in death. However, the ritual failed, leaving the castle in ruins and its followers disillusioned. The eclipse's failure underscored the impossibility of reversing the damage wrought by the Knight of the Black Knives, further deepening the despair that gripped the lands between. The spread of deathblight and the emergence of the Prince of Death threw the Golden Order's theology into disarray. The Order's doctrine, which preached immortality and the denial of death, was now fundamentally undermined by the very forces it had sought to suppress. Deathblight, a manifestation of corrupted death, began to spread across the land, infecting both the living and the dead. This phenomenon was a direct consequence of the Knight of the Black Knives, a reminder that the Golden Order's control over life and death was far from absolute. The Order's inability to contain deathblight eroded its authority, sowing doubt and fear among its followers. As the Golden Order struggled to maintain its grip, Rani's spirit took refuge in a puppet body, hiding in places like the Rani's Rise Tower in Liurnia. Freed from her Empyrean flesh, Rani now pursued her own path, plotting to overthrow the gods and dismantle the Greater Will's influence over the lands between. Her actions marked a turning point in the Shattering War as she became a symbol of rebellion against the established order. Rani's defiance was not merely personal, it was a challenge to the very foundations of the Golden Order and the Greater Will's dominion. The Two Fingers and the Greater Will, once the ultimate arbiters of fate, found themselves losing direct control over Rani. Her decision to forge her own destiny was a direct affront to their authority, signaling a shift in the balance of power. Rani's rebellion was a harbinger of the chaos to come, as the demigods of the Shattering War began to seize great runes and pursue their own ambitions. The Greater Will's inability to rein in Rani foreshadowed its eventual decline, as the lands between descended into further turmoil. Malekith, consumed by guilt over his failure to protect the Rune of Death, retreated to Farum Azula, an ancient and crumbling city suspended in time. There, he became the guardian of the Rune of Death, awaiting the arrival of the Tarnished, who would play a pivotal role in the fate of the lands between. Malekith's isolation was a reflection of his inner torment, as he bore the weight of his failure and the consequences of the Knight of the Black Knives. His presence in Farum Azula served as a grim reminder of the events that had set the Shattering War in motion. The Knight of the Black Knives became a forbidden topic, erased from official records and whispered only in secret by those who remembered the truth. The Golden Order, desperate to maintain its authority, sought to suppress any mention of the assassination, fearing that it would further erode its legitimacy. Yet the whispers persisted, carried by those who had witnessed the fall of Godwin and the rise of Deathblight. These whispers served as a testament to the enduring impact of the Night of the Black Knives, a event that had irrevocably altered the course of history. As the Shattering War escalated, demigods like Radon, Rykard, and Millennia claimed great runes, each seeking to become Elden Lord or ascend to godhood. Their ambitions were fueled by the chaos unleashed by the Night of the Black Knives, as the collapse of the Golden Order created a power vacuum that they were eager to fill. Radon, the Star Scourge, sought to dominate the heavens and halt the movement of the stars, while Rykard, the Lord of Blasphemy, embraced heresy and sought to devour the gods themselves. Millennia, the Blade of Miquella, fought to protect her twin brother's vision of a new order, even as her own body succumbed to the rot. The Night of the Black Knives had set the stage for the Shattering War, a conflict that would tear the lands between apart and reshape its destiny. The assassination of Godwin, the spread of Deathblight, and the rise of figures like Rani and Malekith were all threads in a tapestry of betrayal, ambition, and despair. As the war raged on, the echoes of the Night of the Black Knives continued to reverberate, a reminder of the fragility of power and the inevitability of change. As the fires of the Shattering War raged unchecked across the lands between in its late stages, the once unified demigods descended into a maelstrom of betrayal and ruin. This was the era where the Golden Order's fractured legacy became irreversible, where sibling turned against sibling, and where the land itself bore scars that would never heal. The Late Shattering, or the Age of Decay as some scholars name it, saw the demigods' ambitions collide in catastrophic fashion, each wielding powers that twisted the very fabric of reality, and in doing so, doomed themselves and their kingdoms. At the heart of this collapse stood General Radon, the Star Scourge, a demigod whose loyalty to the Golden Order remained unshaken even as the world crumbled around him. A colossus of martial prowess and gravity magic, Radon had learned a terrible truth. The stars themselves were instruments of fate, their movements dictating the destiny of all beneath them. Worse still, his half-sister, Rani the Witch, had tied her own fate to the celestial bodies, seeking to usher in an age of stars that would overthrow the gods. Radon, ever the loyalist, could not allow such heresy. In an act of staggering defiance, he channeled his mastery over gravity to halt the stars in their tracks, freezing destiny itself in place. The night sky became a prison, its constellations locked in eerie stillness. Rani's grand design was stalled, and with it the fate of every tarnished who might have risen under her guidance. But Radon's defiance came at a cost. His stalemate with the cosmos drew the attention of another demigod, Millennia, Blade of Miquella. To her, Radon was more than a rival. He was an obstacle to her beloved brother Miquella's ascension. Miquella, the most Empyrean of the demigods, had sought to grow the Halleck tree as a sanctuary free from the influence of outer gods, a place where he and his sister could escape their cursed bloodlines. Yet Radon's grip on the stars threatened the balance of power, and so Millennia marched her clean-wrought knights south into the blighted wastes of Caelid to cut him down. What followed was the Battle of Aeonia, a clash so devastating it would sear itself into the land's memory. The clean-wrought knights, their armor gleaming despite the rot festering within them, met Radhan's Redmane forces in a storm of steel and sorcery. The ground trembled under the weight of their conflict, and the air thickened with the stench of decay. Millennia, the undefeated swordswoman, fought Radhan to a standstill, her blade moving faster than thought, her prosthetic limbs whirring with lethal precision. But Radahan, the conqueror of stars, was no ordinary foe. His colossal frame, mounted atop his loyal steed Leonard, wielded gravity itself as a weapon, pulling warriors into the sky only to dash them against the earth. The battle reached its horrific crescendo when Millennia, pushed beyond her limits, unleashed what she had spent her life containing, the Scarlet Rot. This was no mere disease, it was an apocalyptic force, a living curse born from the outer god, sealed within her. With a scream that echoed across Caelid, she bloomed like a cursed flower, releasing a miasma so virulent it turned the very air to poison. The land buckled and blackened, trees twisted into grotesque parodies of life, and soldiers on both sides fell, their bodies dissolving into pustulant sludge. Radon, caught in the epicenter, was consumed by the rot. His mind shattered, his flesh corrupted, yet even in madness, his will endured. He clung to the remnants of his purpose, a ravenous beast wandering the wasteland he had once ruled, feasting on the corpses of friend and foe alike. Millennia, spent and unconscious, was carried from the battlefield by her loyal, clean-wrote knight Finlay, who bore her broken form back to the Haligtree. Caelid was left a festering ruin, a monument to the horrors the demigods could unleash. But even as the dust settled over that cursed land, other horrors were unfolding across the lands between. Far to the west, in the volcanic hellscape of Mot Gelmir, Ricard, Lord of Blasphemy, had abandoned all pretense of loyalty to the Erdtree. Once a noble champion, he had turned to darker ambitions, seeking a power that could rival the gods themselves. His answer lay in the immortal serpent Aigle, a primordial beast said to have devoured a god in ages past. In a grotesque ritual, Rykard merged his body with the serpent, becoming an abomination of flesh and scale, his human form little more than a screaming face embedded in the beast's maw. His followers, the Recusants, waged war under a single blasphemous creed. Join the Serpent King as family. Together we will devour the very gods. Their attacks on Leyndell and the Erdtree's forces grew bolder, their ranks swelling with heretics eager to feast on divinity itself. Yet even Rykard's heresy paled beside the treachery of Mogg, Lord of Blood. While the other demigods warred openly, Mogg moved in shadows. He had long worshipped the Formless Mother, an outer god who craved blood and suffering, and now he sought to raise a dynasty in her name. His target was Miquella, the slumbering demigod whose Empyrean blood made him a vessel for godhood. In a brazen act of sacrilege, Mogg infiltrated the Haligtree, bypassing Millennia's defenses, and stole Miquella from his cocoon. Dragging his prize to the sunless depths of Mogwin Palace, Mogg began a profane ritual, seeking to merge their blood and ascend as a true god of blood. Miquella, trapped in eternal childhood, could not resist. His dreams of a gentle, rot-free world perverted into a nightmare of sanguine worship. Amidst this chaos, one demigod still stood as a bulwark against the tide, Morgott the Grace-Given. Last of the golden lineage, Morgott had spent his life in the shadows, despised for his cursed omen blood. Yet when Leyndell needed a defender, it was Morgott who answered. Viewing his siblings as traitors to the Erdtree, he fortified the capital with fanatical resolve, his knights' cavalry patrolling the outskirts, his fell omen illusions guarding the sewers. To Morgott, the shattering was not just a war, it was a test of faith, and he would prove himself the last true son of Marika, even if it meant standing alone against the world. And so, the late shattering ground onward, a symphony of ruin conducted by the demigods themselves. The stars stood still, the land festered, and the gods' children tore each other apart, all while the greater will watched, silent, as its order crumbled. Word count 1200. This is part 1 of 2 for the fall of the demigods. The next section will conclude the era, covering Godric's grafting, the siege of Lindel, and the demigod's final fates before the Tarnished's return. As the shattering war raged on, and the demigods turned their blades against one another, the first Tarnished began to trickle back into the lands between. These warriors, once exiled by Queen Marika herself, were drawn by the rekindled grace of the Erd Tree, though few would find welcome. The Erd Tree, its light dimmed by the absence of the Elden Ring's unity, spurned most of these returning exiles, leaving them to wander as outcasts. Yet among them were those who still clung to the promise of lordship, their ambition undimmed by the decay around them. One such figure was Godric the Grafted, the weakest and most desperate of the demigods. Humiliated in the Shattering's battles, he fled the capital, abandoning the golden halls of Lindell for the crumbling fortress of Stormvale Castle. There, in his desperation, he turned to a grotesque practice, grafting. By stitching the limbs and flesh of fallen warriors onto his own body, he sought to compensate for his inadequacies, becoming a monstrous patchwork of stolen strength. His victims, both living and dead, were torn apart to feed his vanity, their screams echoing through Stormvale's blood-stained corridors. Yet even this macabre power was a hollow imitation of the might wielded by his kin, a testament to his pitiful legacy. While Godric cowered in his fortress, another horror spread through the lands between, the curse of the Dung Eater. This vile figure, clad in armor crusted with filth, sought to defile not just the living, but the very cycle of rebirth upheld by the Erd Tree. His curse, inflicted through unspeakable acts, ensured that those afflicted would return as loathsome creatures in their next life, their souls forever tainted. His goal was not mere cruelty, but a twisted vision of equality, a world where all were equally cursed, where the golden order of the Erd Tree meant nothing. The seedbed curses he left in his wake were a blight upon the land, a perversion of the natural order that even the demigods could not fully comprehend. Meanwhile, in the shadows, Fia, the deathbed companion, pursued her own dark design. Once a servant of the noble dead, she now sought to resurrect Godwyn the Golden, the first of the demigods to fall. But Godwyn's death was no ordinary passing. His soul had been destroyed in the Night of the Black Knives, leaving only a grotesque, living corpse beneath the roots of the Erd Tree. Fia believed that by collecting the souls of champions, she could restore him, but her efforts birthed something far more unsettling: those who live in death. These revenants, neither truly alive nor properly dead, defied the Golden Order's laws, their existence a heresy that further destabilized the already fractured world. The architect of Godwyn's demise, Rani the Witch, had not emerged unscathed from her own schemes. Though she had orchestrated the Night of the Black Knives to free herself from the Greater Will's influence, the cost was her mortal body. Reduced to a spirit, she took refuge in the form of a doll, a pale imitation of her former self. Yet her ambition burned as fiercely as ever. From her hidden rise in Liurnia, she plotted to overthrow the Greater Will entirely, to replace the golden age of the Erd Tree with her own age of stars, a realm of cold, distant freedom, unshackled from the gods. Her consort, the half-wolf Blade, and her loyal servant Iji stood by her, though even they could not fully grasp the depths of her resolve. As the demigods squabbled and the land decayed, the two fingers, the envoys of the Greater Will, fell silent. These grotesque oracles, once the voice of divine guidance, became inert, their messages lost to the void. Without their direction, the demigods were left to their own devices, their war unchecked by higher authority. The Erd Tree itself, its golden light fading, offered no answers, its grace growing ever more selective. The lands between, already ravaged by the shattering, slipped further into ruin, its people clinging to hollow rituals as the old order crumbled around them. In the capital, Morgoth the Grace-Given last true defender of the Golden Order, fought a desperate battle to hold Leyndell against all who would claim it. Though scorned as an omen, a cursed being shunned by the Erd Tree, he alone remained steadfast in his duty. His illusions masked the city's decay, presenting a facade of golden splendor, even as the streets ran with blood. He barred the gates against tarnished, traitors, and invaders alike, his twin blades cutting down any who dared challenge the last vestige of Marika's reign. Yet even his defiance could not halt the inevitable. The Elden Ring remained shattered, and without it, the Erd Tree's guidance was little more than a dying ember. Far to the north, the last of the fire giants kept vigil over the flame of ruin, the very fire that had once threatened to consume the Erd Tree. Hunted to near extinction by Marika's forces, their kind had been all but erased from history. Only one remained, a colossal figure chained to his own forge, his single eye burning with hatred for the gods who had doomed his people. The flame he guarded was a weapon of absolute destruction, capable of burning even the Erd Tree to ash, a fate the greater will could not allow. And beyond time itself, in the crumbling ruins of Farum Azula, the Dragon Lord Placidusax slumbered. Once the Elden Lord of an age before the Erd Tree, he now waited in stillness, his body racked by storms, his heads severed save for one. He dreamed of the return of his vanished god, the deity who had abandoned him to the currents of time. Around him, the very fabric of reality frayed, the tempests of Farum Azula pulling the ancient city further from the present, a relic of a forgotten age. Into this dying world stepped the tarnished of no renown, the player. Bereft of grace, forgotten by history, they were but one among many drawn to the call of the fractured Elden Ring. Their journey would take them through battlefields and ruins, through the schemes of demigods and the machinations of outer gods. Whether they would restore the Golden Order, usher in a new age, or let the world crumble into darkness remained to be seen. But one truth was undeniable. The age of the demigods was ending, and the lands between would never be the same. The age of reckoning, the present era of the lands between, begins with the resurrection of the tarnished, long exiled from the realm and stripped of grace. Grace, the divine light of the Erd Tree, calls them back, marking the start of a journey that will reshape the fractured world. The tarnished, once cast out for their perceived failure, are now thrust into a land ravaged by the shattering, a war among demigods that left the Elden Ring broken and the Erd Tree's light dimmed. It is here, in this desolate and perilous age, that the Tarnished's tale unfolds, a story of redemption, ambition, and defiance against the crumbling order. Upon their return, the Tarnished encounters Melina, a mysterious maiden who offers an accord. She pledges to guide them to the Erd Tree, the symbol of the Golden Order and the source of grace, in exchange for serving as their finger maiden. Finger maidens are intermediaries between the Tarnished and the Greater Will, the outer god that governs the Golden Order. Melina's motivations remain shrouded in mystery, but her presence is pivotal, granting the Tarnished the ability to level up and strengthen themselves through the power of runes. This partnership sets the stage for the Tarnished's ascent, as they are drawn inexorably toward the Erd Tree and the destiny that awaits them. The Tarnished's journey begins in earnest at the Chapel of Anticipation, a crumbling sanctuary overlooking the sea. Here, they are confronted by the grafted Scion, a grotesque amalgamation of human and insectoid parts, a harbinger of the horrors that await in the lands between. The Scion's grafted limbs symbolize the desperation and depravity that have taken hold in the wake of the shattering, as demigods and warriors alike seek power through unnatural means. Though the Tarnished falls in this initial encounter, their resurrection by grace underscores their role as a chosen one, destined to rise again and again until their task is complete. Emerging from the chapel, The Tarnished encounters Vara, the white-faced mask, a figure whose mocking demeanor belies his keen awareness of the Tarnished's potential. Var taunts them as maidenless, a term that underscores the importance of finger maidens in the Tarnished's journey. Yet he also points them toward Stormvale Castle, the seat of Godric the Grafted, one of the demigods who claimed a shard of the Elden Ring during the Shattering. Vara's cryptic words a hint at the trials ahead, as the Tarnished sets their sights on Stormvale, the first major obstacle in their path. The road to Stormvale is fraught with peril, but it is at the castle's gates that the Tarnished faces their first true test, Margit the Fell Omen. Margit, a towering and spectral figure, is revealed to be a projection of Morgott, the veiled monarch and last king of Leyndell. Morgott, a demigod cursed with the form of an omen, has taken it upon himself to guard the Erdtree and maintain the remnants of the Golden Order. Margit's appearance underscores the Tarnished's role as an interloper, a threat to the fragile status quo. Yet the Tarnished prevails, their victory marking the first step in dismantling Morgott's defenses and challenging the authority of the Golden Order. Within the Stormvale Castle, the Tarnished confronts Godric the Grafted, a demigod whose desperation and obsession with power have driven him to grotesque extremes. Godric, once a member of the golden lineage descended from Godfrey, has fallen far from grace, grafting the limbs of fallen warriors onto his own body in a vain attempt to reclaim his former glory. His defeat at the hands of the Tarnished is a turning point as they claim his great rune, a shard of the Elden Ring that grants immense power. This victory not only cements the Tarnished's growing strength, but also signals the beginning of the end for the demigods who have ruled the lands between since the Shattering. As the Tarnished continues their journey, they encounter Rogier, a fellow Tarnished and sorcerer who delves into the mysteries of the Night of the Black Knives. This pivotal event, orchestrated by Ranni the Witch and carried out by the assassins of the Black Knife Covenant, marked the beginning of the Shattering. Rogier reveals that the Rune of Death, a fragment of the Elden Ring, was stolen and used to slay Godwyn the Golden, Marika's beloved son, and the first demigod to fall. This act of treachery set the stage for the war among demigods and the fracturing of the Elden Ring. Rogier's insights deepen the Tarnished's understanding of the forces at play as they begin to unravel the web of intrigue that has shaped the lands between. The Tarnished's path soon crosses with Ranni the Witch, an enigmatic figure whose ambitions extend far beyond the Golden Order. At the Church of Ella, Ranni offers the Tarnished the spirit-calling bell, a tool that allows them to summon spectral allies in battle. This encounter marks the beginning of Ranni's questline, a parallel narrative that challenges the authority of the Two Fingers, the emissaries of the Greater Will, and seeks to forge a new order free from their influence. Ranni's goals are shrouded in mystery, but her alliance with the Tarnished hints at a shared desire to dismantle the existing power structures and reshape the world. The Tarnished's journey takes them to Raya Lucaria Academy, a bastion of sorcery ruled by Rennala, Queen of the Full Moon. Once a shard bearer and a formidable sorceress, Rennala has been reduced to a shadow of her former self, consumed by grief over the loss of her children and the collapse of her kingdom. Though she is no longer a shard bearer, her defeat at the hands of the Tarnished serves as a reminder of the toll the Shattering has taken on even the mightiest of figures. The Academy, once a center of learning and enlightenment, now stands as a testament to the decay that has gripped the lands between. The Tarnished's next major challenge comes in the form of Radon, the Star Scourge, a demigod whose mastery of gravity magic has halted the movement of the stars. Radon, once a proud warrior and protector of Celia, has been driven mad by the Scarlet Rot, a plague that ravages Caelid. His defeat, achieved with the aid of allies summoned through the efforts of Jaren and the Festival of Radon, frees the stars from his gravitational hold, allowing them to resume their celestial dance. This victory has far-reaching consequences, as it sets in motion events that will shape the Tarnished's journey and the fate of the lands between. As the Tarnished delves deeper into the mysteries of the Shattering, they encounter Blad, Rani's loyal shadow, and a wolf-like warrior bound to serve her. Blad's loyalty is tested when the two fingers, seeking to maintain their control over Rani, turn him hostile. The Tarnished is forced to confront and slay Blade, a tragic figure whose devotion to Rani ultimately leads to his downfall. This event underscores the lengths to which the two fingers will go to preserve their authority, as well as the sacrifices required to challenge their dominion. Rani's questline reaches its climax with the assassination of her own body, a symbolic act that severs her ties to the two fingers and the Golden Order. By destroying her mortal form and ascending to godhood, Rani sets herself on a path to forge a new order, one that rejects the influence of the greater will and embraces the freedom of the stars. Her actions resonate with the Tarnished, who must now decide whether to align with her vision or pursue their own destiny. The Tarnished's journey culminates in Leyndell, the royal capital and seat of the Golden Order. Here they face Morgott, the last king, in a battle that reveals his true identity as Margit the Fell Omen. Morgott, cursed with the form of an omen, has dedicated his life to defending the Erdtree and preserving the remnants of the Golden Order. His defeat is a poignant moment as he laments the futility of the Shattering and the endless cycle of conflict it has wrought. The Tarnished's victory in Leyndell marks the end of an era as they stand on the precipice of the Erdtree, ready to confront the forces that have shaped the lands between and forge a new future. As the Tarnished delves deeper into the mysteries of the lands between, they encounter the loathsome Dung Eater, a figure whose very existence is a blight upon the Golden Order. This cursed individual seeks to defile the world, spreading a seedbed curse that corrupts the very essence of life. The Tarnished learns of the Dung Eater's grotesque ambitions, which culminate in an ending that would plunge the lands between into perpetual suffering. This path, known as the Blessing of Despair, is a mockery of the Golden Order, twisting its principles into a nightmare of eternal torment. The Dung Eater's curse is not merely a physical affliction, but a spiritual corruption, ensuring that all who come after will inherit a world of unending misery. The Tarnished must decide whether to embrace this dark fate or reject it, knowing that their choice will echo through the ages. With the Erdtree's thorns barring the path to the Elden Ring, the Tarnished is faced with a monumental decision. To proceed, they must burn the thorns, a task that requires the flame of ruin. This act of destruction is not without cost. If the Tarnished chooses to summon the flame of ruin through the guidance of Melina, her sacrifice becomes inevitable. Melina, a mysterious figure with her own enigmatic goals, willingly offers herself as kindling, her final words a poignant reminder of the stakes at hand. Alternatively, the Tarnished may seek the frenzied flame, a chaotic force that promises power at the price of sanity. By accepting the frenzied flame, the Tarnished aligns themselves with the Three Fingers, entities that seek to reduce all existence to a primordial unity. This path spares Melina, but condemns the Tarnished to become a harbinger of destruction, their mind consumed by the chaos they unleash. The Erdtree ablaze, the Tarnished ventures into the crumbling ruins of Farum Azula, a place suspended in time and space. Here, the remnants of an ancient civilization cling to existence, their once great city now a testament to decay. At the heart of Farum Azula lies Malekith, the Black Blade, a fearsome warrior tasked with safeguarding the Rune of Death. Malekith, once known as Gurranq, is a tragic figure, bound by duty and consumed by guilt over the theft of the Rune of Death by Rani. The Tarnished confronts Malekith in a battle that shakes the very foundations of Farum Azula. Upon his defeat, the Rune of Death is unleashed, its power once more free to influence the world. This pivotal moment marks the beginning of the end for the Golden Order, as the Rune of Death's release destabilizes the fragile balance maintained by the Erd Tree. Returning to the lands between, the Tarnished faces Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, who has returned from exile to reclaim his title. Once known as Huara Lu, chieftain of the Badlands, Godfrey embodies the raw, untamed strength of a warrior. His return is driven by a deep-seated desire to prove his worth, to once again stand as the Elden Lord. The battle between the Tarnished and Godfrey is a clash of titans, each strike echoing with the weight of history. Godfrey's defeat is a somber moment, a reminder of the transient nature of power and the inevitability of change. His fall clears the path for the Tarnished to confront the final guardians of the Erd Tree. Within the Erd Tree, the Tarnished discovers Radagon, the hidden Elden Lord, and the other half of Queen Marika. Radagon's existence is a closely guarded secret, his role as Marika's counterpart shrouded in mystery. As the Tarnished approaches, Radagon rises to defend the Erd Tree, his golden hammer glowing with divine power. The battle is fierce, Radagon's movements a blend of grace and brutality. His defeat reveals a startling truth. Radagon and Marika are one and the same, their duality are reflections of the fractured nature of the Golden Order. From Radagon's corpse emerges the Elden Beast, a vassal of the greater will and the true final foe. This colossal entity, a manifestation of the Elden Ring itself, represents the pinnacle of the greater will's influence over the lands between. The Tarnished's battle with the Elden Beast is a struggle against the very essence of the Golden Order, a fight to determine the future of the world. With the Elden Beast defeated, the Tarnished stands at the precipice of a new era. The age of the Golden Order has ended, and the lands between are poised for transformation. The Tarnished's actions will shape this new age, their choices echoing through the annals of history. Should they choose to restore the Golden Order, ushering in the Age of Fracture, they will mend the broken Elden Ring and maintain the status quo, albeit in a fractured form. Alternatively, the Tarnished may align with Ranni the Witch, embracing her vision of an age of stars. In this ending, Ranni takes the Elden Ring and departs with the Tarnished into the cosmos, freeing the world from the influence of gods and ushering in an era of uncertainty and possibility. If the Tarnished has embraced the frenzied flame, they become the Lord of Chaos, their mind consumed by the desire to reduce all existence to a primordial unity. This ending, known as the Age of Chaos, is a cataclysmic event that obliterates the distinctions between life and death, order and disorder. The lands between are consumed by fire, their inhabitants reduced to ash, and the Tarnished stands as the harbinger of this destruction. The frenzied flame's influence is absolute, its chaos spreading unchecked until nothing remains but a single, unified void. For those who have followed the path of the Dung Eater, the blessing of despair awaits. This ending, the Age of Despair, curses the world with perpetual suffering, a mockery of the Golden Order's ideals. The Dung Eater's seedbed curse spreads across the lands between, corrupting every living thing and ensuring that future generations will inherit a world of unending torment. The Tarnished, now a vessel of this curse, becomes a symbol of the world's degradation, their actions a testament to the depths of despair. Each ending represents a fundamental shift in the nature of the lands between, the Tarnished's choices shaping the future in ways that will resonate for millennia. Whether they restore the Golden Order, embrace the stars, unleash chaos, or curse the world, the Tarnished's journey is a testament to the power of individual agency in a world dominated by gods and ancient forces. Their actions, born of struggle and sacrifice, herald a new era, one defined by the choices they have made and the legacy they leave behind. The lands between are forever changed by the Tarnished's journey, stand as a testament to the enduring impact of those who dare to challenge the established order. The Age of Stars, or Duskborn, begins in the aftermath of the Tarnished's climactic battle against the Elden Beast, a creature born of the Greater Will's divine essence and the embodiment of the Golden Order's authority. This victory, achieved in the heart of the Erd Tree, severs the Greater Will's direct influence over the lands between, marking a profound turning point in the history of this fractured world. The Tarnished, having risen from obscurity to become Elden Lord, now stands at the precipice of a new era, one shaped by the choices they make and the alliances they forge. As the dust settles, Rani the Witch, the enigmatic and ambitious daughter of Renala of the Carian royal family, ascends to power. Her vision for the lands between is starkly different from the Golden Order's rigid hierarchy. Rani's Age of Stars ending sees her becoming the new ruler, not through the traditional mantle of Elden Lord, but as a sovereign of the cosmos. She initiates this age by severing ties with the Greater Will entirely, removing its dominance and replacing it with her own celestial influence. Accompanied by the Tarnished, Rani departs for the stars, leaving the lands between shrouded in eternal night. This departure is not merely symbolic, but a deliberate act to ensure the world's independence from the meddling of outer gods, entities like the Greater Will that have long sought to control its destiny. The Erd Tree, once the radiant heart of the Golden Order, fades into obscurity, its golden light replaced by the cold, distant glow of the stars. This transformation symbolizes the end of the Golden Order's reign, a system built on the denial of death and the imposition of a singular divine will. Rani's Age of Stars brings with it a new philosophy, one that embraces uncertainty and the unknown, allowing the lands between to chart its own course, free from external interference. However, Rani's path is not the only one the Tarnished can choose. Fia, the deathbed companion, offers an alternative vision for the future. Her Duskborn ending seeks to restore those who live in death, beings cursed and shunned by the Golden Order, to their rightful place in the world. Fia's journey is one of redemption and reconciliation, as she works to mend the fractures caused by the Golden Order's rejection of death. In this ending, the Tarnished becomes the Lord of the Duskborn, ushering in a new order where death is no longer feared or suppressed, but embraced as a natural and integral part of existence. The Duskborn ending represents a profound shift in the lands between spiritual landscape. Those who live in death, once hunted and persecuted, find acceptance and purpose in this new era. The Age of Duskborn is marked by a balance between life and death, a harmony that the Golden Order had sought to disrupt. This ending does not seek to destroy the old order, but to transform it, creating a world where the boundaries between life and death are fluid and interconnected. Yet there are darker paths the Tarnished may tread. Should they succumb to the allure of the frenzied flame, the world will be consumed by chaos and destruction. This ending, born of the Three Fingers' influence, sees the Tarnished embracing madness and burning all creation to ash. The frenzied flame's apocalyptic vision is one of total annihilation, a scorched earth policy that leaves nothing behind but ruin. Melina, the Tarnished's steadfast companion, is deeply opposed to this path. Sworn to kill the Tarnished if they embrace the frenzied flame, she confronts them in a final, tragic encounter. Melina's motivations are rooted in her desire to preserve the world, even in its fractured state. Her confrontation with the Tarnished is a poignant moment, highlighting the moral weight of the choices they must make. The Three Fingers' influence, once unleashed, spreads uncontrollably, consuming all life and leaving only chaos in its wake. This ending is irreversible, forever altering the world with no possibility of returning to the previous order. The lands between, once a realm of intricate beauty and profound mystery, is reduced to ash, a testament to the destructive potential of unchecked ambition and despair. In contrast, Rani's Age of Stars offers a vision of independence and renewal. The lands between, freed from the meddling of outer gods, begins to chart its own course. The Nox, an ancient and enigmatic people long exiled and forgotten, find renewed purpose in this new era. Their alignment with Rani's vision underscores the Age of Stars' embrace of the unknown and the unconventional. The Carian royal family's legacy is cemented as Rani's rule reshapes the world's political and spiritual landscape. The Age of Stars is not merely a change in leadership, but a fundamental reimagining of the world's purpose and direction. Rani's ascent marks the culmination of her lifelong struggle against the forces that sought to control her fate, a struggle that now extends to the entire lands between. As the Age of Stars unfolds, the world enters a period of profound transformation. The Erd Tree's light may have faded, but the stars offer a new kind of illumination, one that guides rather than dictates. The lands between, long shaped by the whims of outer gods, now stands on the precipice of a future defined by its own choices and aspirations. Yet the Age of Stars is not without its challenges. The eternal night that shrouds the lands between brings with it a sense of uncertainty and unease. The absence of the greater will's guiding hand leaves a void, one that must be filled by the collective will of its inhabitants. Rani's vision is one of independence, but it also requires a willingness to embrace the unknown and navigate the complexities of a world without clear answers. The Nox, long marginalized and forgotten, find themselves at the forefront of this new era. Their alignment with Rani's vision underscores the Age of Stars' embrace of diversity and the unconventional. The Nox's ancient knowledge and mystical practices, once suppressed by the Golden Order, now play a crucial role in shaping the future of the lands between. The Carian royal family's legacy is further solidified as Rani's rule reshapes the world's political and spiritual landscape. The Age of Stars is not merely a change in leadership, but a fundamental reimagining of the world's purpose and direction. Rani's ascent marks the culmination of her lifelong struggle against the forces that sought to control her fate, a struggle that now extends to the entire lands between. As the Age of Stars unfolds, the world enters a period of profound transformation. The Erd Tree's light may have faded, but the stars offer a new kind of illumination, one that guides rather than dictates. The lands between, long shaped by the whims of outer gods, now stands on the precipice of a future defined by its own choices and aspirations. Yet the Age of Stars is not without its challenges. The eternal night that shrouds the lands between brings with it a sense of uncertainty and unease. The absence of the greater will's guiding hand leaves a void, one that must be filled by the collective will of its inhabitants. Rani's vision is one of independence, but it also requires a willingness to embrace the unknown and navigate the complexities of a world without clear answers. The Nox, long marginalized and forgotten, find themselves at the forefront of this new era. Their alignment with Rani's vision underscores the Age of Stars' embrace of diversity and the unconventional. The Nox's ancient knowledge and mystical practices, once suppressed by the Golden Order, now play a crucial role in shaping the future of the lands between. The Carian royal family's legacy is further solidified as Rani's rule reshapes the world's political and spiritual landscape. The Age of Stars is not merely a change in leadership, but a fundamental reimagining of the world's purpose and direction. Rani's ascent marks the culmination of her lifelong struggle against the forces that sought to control her fate, a struggle that now extends to the entire lands between. As the Age of Stars unfolds, the world enters a period of profound transformation. The Erd tree's light may have faded, but the stars offer a new kind of illumination, one that guides rather than dictates. The lands between, long shaped by the whims of outer gods, now stands on the precipice of a future defined by its own choices and aspirations. Yet the Age of Stars is not without its challenges. The eternal night that shrouds the lands between brings with it a sense of uncertainty and unease. The absence of the greater will's guiding hand leaves a void, one that must be filled by the collective will of its inhabitants. Ronnie's vision is one of independence, but it also requires a willingness to embrace the unknown and navigate the complexities of a world without clear answers. The Nox, long marginalized and forgotten, find themselves at the forefront of this new era. Their alignment with Ronnie's vision underscores the Age of Stars' embrace of diversity and the unconventional. The Nox's ancient knowledge and mystical practices, once suppressed by the Golden Order, now play a crucial role in shaping the future of the lands between. The Carrion royal family's legacy is further solidified as Ronnie's rule reshapes the world's political and spiritual landscape. The Age of Stars is not merely a change in leadership, but a fundamental reimagining of the world's purpose and direction. Ronnie's ascent marks the culmination of her lifelong struggle against the forces that sought to control her fate, a struggle that now extends to the entire lands between. As the Age of Stars unfolds, the world enters a period of profound transformation. The Erd tree's light may have faded, but the stars offer a new kind of illumination, one that guides rather than dictates. The lands between, long shaped by the whims of outer gods, now stands on the precipice of a future defined by its own choices and aspirations. Yet the Age of Stars is not without its challenges. The eternal night that shrouds the lands between brings with it a sense of uncertainty and unease. The absence of the greater will's guiding hand leaves a void, one that must be filled by the collective will of its inhabitants. Ronnie's vision is one of independence, but it also requires a willingness to embrace the unknown and navigate the complexities of a world without clear answers. The Nox, long marginalized and forgotten, find themselves at the forefront of this new era. Their alignment with Ronnie's vision underscores the Age of Stars' embrace of diversity and the unconventional. The Nox's ancient knowledge and mystical practices, once suppressed by the Golden Order, now play a crucial role in shaping the future of the lands between. The Carrion royal family's legacy is further solidified as Ronnie's rule reshapes the world's political and spiritual landscape. The Age of Stars is not merely a change in leadership, but a fundamental reimagining of the world's purpose and direction. Ronnie's ascent marks the culmination of her lifelong struggle against the forces that sought to control her fate, a struggle that now extends to the entire lands between. As the Age of Stars unfolds, the world enters a period of profound transformation. The Erd tree's light may have faded, but the stars offer a new kind of illumination, one that guides rather than dictates. The lands between, long shaped by the whims of outer gods, now stands on the precipice of a future defined by its own choices and aspirations. Yet the Age of Stars is not without its challenges. The eternal night that shrouds the lands between brings with it a sense of uncertainty and unease. The absence of the greater will's guiding hand leaves a void, one that must be filled by the collective will of its inhabitants. Rani's vision is one of independence, but it also requires a willingness to embrace the unknown and navigate the complexities of a world without clear answers. The Nox, long marginalized and forgotten, find themselves at the forefront of this new era. Their alignment with Rani's vision underscores the Age of Stars' embrace of diversity and the unconventional. The Nox's ancient knowledge and mystical practices, once suppressed by the Golden Order, now play a crucial role in shaping the future of the lands between. The Carian royal family's legacy is further solidified as Rani's rule reshapes the world's political and spiritual landscape. The Age of Stars is not merely a change in leadership, but a fundamental reimagining of the world's purpose and direction. Rani's ascent marks the culmination of her lifelong struggle against the forces that sought to control her fate, a struggle that now extends to the entire lands between. As the Age of Stars unfolds, the world enters a period of profound transformation. The Erd Tree's light may have faded, but the stars offer a new kind of illumination, one that guides rather than dictates. The lands between, long shaped by the whims of outer gods, now stands on the precipice of a future defined by its own choices and aspirations. Yet the Age of Stars is not without its challenges. The eternal night that shrouds the lands between brings with it a sense of uncertainty and unease. The absence of the greater will's guiding hand leaves a void, one that must be filled by the collective will of its inhabitants. Rani's vision is one of independence, but it also requires a willingness to embrace the unknown and navigate the complexities of a world without clear answers. The Nox, long marginalized and forgotten, find themselves at the forefront of this new era. Their alignment with Rani's vision underscores the Age of Stars' embrace of diversity and the unconventional. The Nox's ancient knowledge and mystical practices, once suppressed by the Golden Order, now play a crucial role in shaping the future of the lands between. The Carian royal family's legacy is further solidified as Rani's rule reshapes the world's political and spiritual landscape. The Age of Stars is not merely a change in leadership, but a fundamental reimagining of the world's purpose and direction. Rani's ascent marks the culmination of her lifelong struggle against the forces that sought to control her fate, a struggle that now extends to the entire lands between. As the Age of Stars unfolds, the world enters a period of profound transformation. The Erd Tree's light may have faded, but the stars offer a new kind of illumination, one that guides rather than dictates. The lands between, long shaped by the whims of outer gods, now stands on the precipice of a future defined by its own choices and aspirations. Yet the Age of Stars is not without its challenges. The eternal night that shrouds the lands between brings with it a sense of uncertainty and unease. The absence of the greater will's guiding hand leaves a void, one that must be filled by the collective will of its inhabitants. Rani's vision is one of independence, but it also requires a willingness to embrace the unknown and navigate the complexities of a world without clear answers. The Nox, long marginalized and forgotten, find themselves at the forefront of this new era. Their alignment with Rani's vision underscores the Age of Stars' embrace of diversity and the unconventional. The Nox's ancient knowledge and mystical practices, once suppressed by the Golden Order, now play a crucial role in shaping the future of the lands between. The Carian royal family's legacy is further solidified as Rani's rule reshapes the world's political and spiritual landscape. The Age of Stars is not merely a change in leadership, but a fundamental reimagining of the world's purpose and direction. Rani's ascent marks the culmination of her lifelong struggle against the forces that sought to control her fate, a struggle that now extends to the entire lands between. As the Age of Stars unfolds, the world enters a period of profound transformation. The Erd Tree's light may have faded, but the stars offer a new kind of illumination, one that guides rather than dictates. The lands between, long shaped by the whims of outer gods, now stands on the precipice of a future defined by its own choices and aspirations. Yet the age of stars is not without its challenges. The eternal night that shrouds the lands between brings with it a sense of uncertainty and unease. The absence of the greater will's guiding hand leaves a void, one that must be filled by the collective will of its inhabitants. Rani's vision is one of independence, but it also requires a willingness to embrace the unknown and navigate the complexities of a world without clear answers. The Nox, long marginalized and forgotten, find themselves at the forefront of this new era. Their alignment with Rani's vision underscores the Age of Stars' embrace of diversity and the unconventional. The Nox's ancient knowledge and mystical practices, once suppressed by the Golden Order, now play a crucial role in shaping the future of the lands between. The Carian royal family's legacy is further solidified as Rani's rule reshapes the world's political and spiritual landscape. The Age of Stars is not merely a change in leadership, but a fundamental reimagining of the world's purpose and direction. Rani's ascent marks the culmination of her lifelong struggle against the forces that sought to control her fate, a struggle that now extends to the entire lands between. As the Age of Stars unfolds, the world enters a period of profound transformation. The Erd Tree's light may have faded, but the stars offer a new kind of illumination, one that guides rather than dictates. The lands between, long shaped by the whims of outer gods, now stands on the precipice of a future defined by its own choices and aspirations. Yet the Age of Stars is not without its challenges. The eternal night that shrouds the lands between brings with it a sense of uncertainty and unease. The absence of the greater will's guiding hand leaves a void, one that must be filled by the collective will of its inhabitants. Rani's vision is one of independence, but it also requires a willingness to embrace the unknown and navigate the complexities of a world without clear answers. The Nox, long marginalized and forgotten, find themselves at the forefront of this new era. Their alignment with Rani's vision underscores the Age of Stars' embrace of diversity and the unconventional. The Nox's ancient knowledge and mystical practices, once suppressed by the Golden Order, now play a crucial role in shaping the future of the lands between. The Carian royal family's legacy is further solidified as Rani's rule reshapes the world's political and spiritual landscape. The Age of Stars is not merely a change in leadership, but a fundamental reimagining of the world's purpose and direction. Rani's ascent marks the culmination of her lifelong struggle against the forces that sought to control her fate, a struggle that now extends to the entire lands between. As the Age of Stars unfolds, the world enters a period of profound transformation. The Erd Tree's light may have faded, but the stars offer a new kind of illumination, one that guides rather than dictates. The lands between, long shaped by the whims of outer gods, now stands on the precipice of a future defined by its own choices and aspirations. Yet the Age of Stars is not without its challenges. The eternal night that shrouds the lands between brings with it a sense of uncertainty and unease. The absence of the greater will's guiding hand leaves a void, one that must be filled by the collective will of its inhabitants. Rani's vision is one of independence, but it also requires a willingness to embrace the unknown and navigate the complexities of a world without clear answers. The Nox, long marginalized and forgotten, find themselves at the forefront of this new era. Their alignment with Rani's vision underscores the Age of Stars' embrace of diversity and the unconventional. The Nox's ancient knowledge and mystical practices, once suppressed by the Golden Order, now play a crucial role in shaping the future of the lands between. The Carian royal family's legacy is further solidified as Rani's rule reshapes the world's political and spiritual landscape. The Age of Stars is not merely a change in leadership, but a fundamental reimagining of the world's purpose and direction. Rani's ascent marks the culmination of her lifelong struggle against the forces that sought to control her fate, a struggle that now extends to the entire lands between. As the Age of Stars unfolds, the world enters a period of profound transformation. The Erdtree's light may have faded, but the stars offer a new kind of illumination, one that guides rather than dictates. The lands between, long shaped by the whims of outer gods, now stands on the precipice of a future defined by its own choices and aspirations. Yet the Age of Stars is not without its challenges. The eternal night that shrouds the lands between brings with it a sense of uncertainty and unease. The absence of the greater will's guiding hand leaves a void, one that must be filled by the collective will of its inhabitants. Rani's vision is one of independence, but it also requires a willingness to embrace the unknown and navigate the complexities of a world without clear answers. The Nox, long marginalized and forgotten, find themselves at the forefront of this new era. Their alignment with Rani's vision underscores the Age of Stars' embrace of diversity and the unconventional. The Nox's ancient knowledge and mystical practices, once suppressed by the Golden Order, now play a crucial role in shaping the future of the lands between. The Carian royal family's legacy is further solidified as Rani's rule reshapes the world's political and spiritual landscape. The Age of Stars is not merely a change in leadership, but a fundamental reimagining of the world's purpose and direction. Rani's ascent marks the culmination of her lifelong struggle against the forces that sought to control her fate, a struggle that now extends to the entire lands between. As the Age of Stars unfolds, the world enters a period of profound transformation. The Erdtree's light may have faded, but the stars offer a new kind of illumination, one that guides rather than dictates. The lands between, long shaped by the whims of outer gods, now stands on the precipice of a future defined by its own choices and aspirations. Yet the Age of Stars is not without its challenges. The eternal night that shrouds the lands between brings with it a sense of uncertainty and unease. The absence of the greater will's guiding hand leaves a void, one that must be filled by the collective will of its inhabitants. Rani's vision is one of independence, but it also requires a willingness to embrace the unknown and navigate the complexities of a world without clear answers. The Nox, long marginalized and forgotten, find themselves at the forefront of this new era. Their alignment with Rani's vision underscores the Age of Stars' embrace of diversity and the unconventional. The Nox's ancient knowledge and mystical practices, once suppressed by the Golden Order, now play a crucial role in shaping the future of the lands between. The Carian royal family's legacy is further solidified as Rani's rule reshapes the world's political and spiritual landscape. The Age of Stars is not merely a change in leadership, but a fundamental reimagining of the world's purpose and direction. Rani's ascent marks the culmination of her lifelong struggle against the forces that sought to control her fate, a struggle that now extends to the entire lands between. As the Age of Stars unfolds, the world enters a period of profound transformation. The Erdtree's light may have faded, but the stars offer a new kind of illumination, one that guides rather than dictates. The lands between, long shaped by the whims of outer gods, now stands on the precipice of a future defined by its own choices and aspirations. Yet the Age of Stars is not without its challenges. The eternal night that shrouds the lands between brings with it a sense of uncertainty and unease. The absence of the greater will's guiding hand leaves a void, one that must be filled by the collective will of its inhabitants. Rani's vision is one of independence, but it also requires a willingness to embrace the unknown and navigate the complexities of a world without clear answers. The Nox, long marginalized and forgotten, find themselves at the forefront of this new era. Their alignment with Rani's vision underscores the Age of Stars' embrace of diversity and the unconventional. The Nox's ancient knowledge and mystical practices, once suppressed by the Golden Order, now play a crucial role in shaping the future of the lands between. The Carian royal family's legacy is further solidified as Rani's rule reshapes the world's political and spiritual landscape. The Age of Stars is not merely of a change in leadership, but a fundamental reimagining of the world's purpose and direction. Rani's ascent marks the culmination of her lifelong struggle against the forces that sought to control her fate, a struggle that now extends to the entire lands between. As the Age of Stars unfolds, the world enters a period of profound transformation. The Erd Tree's light may have faded, but the stars offer a new kind of illumination, one that guides rather than dictates. The lands between, long shaped by the whims of outer gods, now stands on the precipice of a future defined by its own choices and aspirations. Yet the Age of Stars is not without its challenges. The eternal night that shrouds the lands between brings with it a sense of uncertainty and unease. The absence of the greater will's guiding hand leaves a void, one that must be filled by the collective will of its inhabitants. Rani's vision is one of independence, but it also requires a willingness to embrace the unknown and navigate the complexities of a world without clear answers. The Nox, long marginalized and forgotten, find themselves at the forefront of this new era. Their alignment with Rani's vision underscores the Age of Stars' embrace of diversity and the unconventional. The Nox's ancient knowledge and mystical practices, once suppressed by the Golden Order, now play a crucial role in shaping the future of the lands between. The Carian royal family's legacy is further solidified as Rani's rule reshapes the world's political and spiritual landscape. The Age of Stars is not merely a change in leadership, but a fundamental reimagining of the world's purpose and direction. Rani's ascent marks the culmination of her lifelong struggle against the forces that sought to control her fate, and a struggle that now extends to the entire lands between. As the Age of Stars unfolds, the world enters a period of profound transformation. The Erd Tree's light may have faded, but the stars offer a new kind of illumination, one that guides rather than dictates. The lands between, long shaped by the whims of outer gods, the Duskborn ending, shaped by the Tarnished's alliance with Fia, marks a profound shift in the fabric of the lands between. With the restoration of Godwyn the Golden's soul, albeit in a corrupted form, the Death Prince emerges as a new figurehead for those who live in death. Godwyn, once a symbol of divine perfection, becomes a paradoxical entity, embodying both life and death in a way that defies the Golden Order's rigid dichotomies. His resurrection, though incomplete, grants him a twisted form of immortality, one that resonates deeply with the undead who have long been ostracized by the living. The eclipse, once a symbol of failed resurrection and despair, now takes on a central role in the Duskborn era. It becomes a harbinger of this new order, its darkened skies a reminder of the cyclical nature of life and death. The eclipse motif, as it comes to be known, is etched into the architecture of the new capital, a city built around the worship of those who live in death. This capital, rising from the ashes of Lindell, becomes a hub of necromantic practices, blending life and death in ways previously unimaginable. The Tarnished's decision to side with Fia not only reshapes the political landscape, but also redefines the spiritual ethos of the lands between, creating a society where death is not an end, but a continuation. In stark contrast, the frenzied flame ending represents the utter annihilation of all distinctions between life and death. The tarnished, consumed by the flame of frenzy, becomes a vessel for chaos, erasing the boundaries that once defined existence. The lands between, once a tapestry of diverse regions and factions, is reduced to a barren wasteland, consumed by the all devouring flame. Entire regions, from the misty forests of Limgrave to the volcanic peaks of the mountain tops of the giants, are obliterated, leaving only scorched earth and ash in their wake. The frenzied flame's destruction is absolute, extinguishing not only life, but also the very concept of order. The tarnished themselves, once a beacon of hope or a harbinger of change, are lost to the void of madness, their legacy one of destruction and despair. The frenzied flame ending leaves no room for resurrection, no possibility of renewal, only an eternal void where nothing remains. Meanwhile, Rani's Age of Stars offers a vision of the future that is both enigmatic and transformative. The rise of new constellations, each representing a different aspect of her cosmic rule, marks the beginning of an era defined by mystery and detachment. Rani, the Empyrean who sought to escape the influence of the Greater Will, succeeds in creating a world where the old conflicts between the Golden Order and the forces of chaos are rendered obsolete. Her Age of Stars is one of cold beauty, where the night sky becomes a canvas for her will. The constellations, such as the moon of Noxtella and the dark moon, serve as symbols of her power, guiding the fate of the lands between from afar. This cosmic rule is not without its challenges, however, as the detachment it fosters creates a sense of isolation among the inhabitants of the lands between. The Tarnished's role in this ending is remembered as one of liberation, freeing the world from the shackles of the Golden Order and ushering in an age of uncertainty and possibility. The Duskborn ending, by contrast, sees the creation of a new capital centered around the worships of those who live in death. This city, known as the Necropolis of Dusk, becomes a testament to the blending of life and death. Its architecture, inspired by the eclipse motif, features towering spires adorned with symbols of the undead, while its streets are lined with shrines dedicated to Godwyn the Golden in his corrupted form. The necromantic practices that flourish here are unlike anything seen before, combining ancient rituals with new innovations. These practices allow the undead to coexist with the living, creating a society where death is not feared but embraced. The Tarnished's legacy in this ending is one of transformation, as their actions pave the way for a new understanding of life and death. The Necropolis of Dusk becomes a beacon for those who live in death, drawing them from all corners of the lands between to join this new order. In the frenzied flame ending, the extinction of all known factions is a grim inevitability. The Tarnished, consumed by madness, becomes a force of destruction, erasing the boundaries between life and death and leaving the lands between a barren wasteland. The factions that once vied for power, from the Golden Order to the Volcano Manor, are obliterated, their histories lost to the void. The Tarnished themselves, once a symbol of potential, are consumed by the flame of frenzy, their legacy one of annihilation. The lands between, once a land of diverse cultures and beliefs, is reduced to a lifeless expanse, devoid of any form of life or order. The frenzied flame's destruction is absolute, leaving no possibility of renewal or resurrection. Rani's Age of Stars, however, brings an end to the conflict between the Golden Order and the forces of chaos.